There it goes.
Okay, so welcome to the our first ever East Hampton orientation for new city councilors. Again, kudos to Councilor Hayes and Smith, who thought of this was important to get going, so thank you for your efforts on that. We're probably going to be jumping around, and we have other city councilors here to bring in their points of wisdom as we go along. I see they started off with a subcommittees, which is a great point, that some of them, they're actually descriptions of what they do. A lot of them are not. We're working to make that complete. As a summary, again, it'll probably be expanded upon, but appointments, that is the committee that any mayoral appointment comes to, which is essentially, I think it's basically any appointment in the city. I mean, there are some direct appointments that don't come through us, but the vast majority of them come through us. And we, as the appointing authority, approve them. It first goes to the appointments committee, and then voted on generally by the whole committee. Their terms vary depending on what kind of board they are, whether there be a single department head position or whether it be a multi-member body. But that'll be expanded. Joy, you have some more to add to that?
Yeah, the city council has direct appointment control over the assessor, the city clerk, and the auditor. Those are our 3 city council appointments. The rest of the appointments are appointments that are made by the mayor to all of the boards, such as the health board, planning board, things like that, are all made and brought to us by the mayor, and we can either yay them or nay them, and then we have a certain time period in which to take action, and if we don't take action on the appointments, then they will automatically become appointments.
So these are the open positions on the website.
Yep.
That people just volunteer, write
Correct.
letters to the mayor.
Correct.
Some of these are also
vetted by the
paid.
mayor
Some of these are,
first?
Yes.
Yeah, these are paid positions too. You know, like the assessor or
Yeah.
finance
Right,
director.
but those are our appointments. The mayor does not appoint the assessor.
But does the
No.
mayor also appoint paid positions?
Yeah, like finance director, that's her appointment.
Well, yeah, but those are her appointments,
Okay.
but
I'm just-
they're directly under the city side of her operations as the city CEO, I'm gonna call it.
So finance subcommittee, obviously, they cover most everything financial, any kind of expenditures, discussions about loans, discussions of transfers of money between budget lines within the same budget, as well as if they need a supplemental, if they need money from outside their specified budget, those are all discussed. So everything kind of financially based. When it comes to budgeting, which you'll find out as the council in general, we have right to take money away from a line item, or we don't have the authority to add money to a line item. And so, you know, in today's budget.
Or to reappropriate.
Or to move it to somewhere else. So we can either say, no, that's too much money, cut it, but that's kind of all we can do. And in today's budget, that rarely happens, or that happens.
I think it's only happened once.
Jen?
Should we have somebody making notes within this, like, it seems kind of weird that we don't actually have a description of the finance subcommittee.
Yeah, well, my thing is because
What the roles and responsibilities of that committee are.
I just think because we're talking off the top of our head, I'd rather sit down with some more thought to it, maybe.
Yeah.
Each
Right,
committee, I know that Jen has asked us
Yeah, that might be a good thing.
in appointments to put together a job description type of thing, so she could add it into
Yeah.
this stuff.
Why don't we do that for every subcommittee this is missing? We can submit to them, you know, could you please come up with a paragraph
Yeah.
on your responsibilities? So that'd be great. So ordinance covers basically all the ordinances in the city, which varies from traffic to trucks and bicycles to
Signs.
ordinances, you know, zoning. So it's a huge area.
It is big.
So we have documents that correspond to ordinance.
What do you mean by that?
Our city charter, our ordinance.
Oh, yeah, so like an example
All of our
of that?
bylaws, all the city.
All of our bylaws.
So I feel
City
ancient,
bylaws
because I
and the
understand you guys
city-
didn't get something that looked like this, right?
No, we did.
Oh, you did? Oh, Barb said
Wait.
you did.
Oh, thanks.
Oh, no, that, no.
Okay, yeah.
We got a binder, we
Yeah.
got 2
I
binders.
It's
have
similar,
the
right?
original.
So you'll find in there, like,
It wasn't pretty.
This is the quick and easy version. Watch
the
this.
beginning of it is the homeroom charter, which we'll touch on.
I'm sure
Yeah, we
briefly.
got that.
And then throughout all the rest of it are all the different city ordinances. Here's vehicles for hire. We go through it and discuss, you know, taxi cabs, where they're permitted,
We
what
get
kind of
that.
permitting they
Mhm.
need.
It's also all up on the website, too. all of
And
them.
didn't we
Yeah,
get
it's on the website
ordinances?
too.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. we
So
did.
sewer
I'm sure
and
every meeting
water.
is just 5 different, instead of one.
Yeah, it
big
wasn't all in one binder, but.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And then there's zoning ordinances, setbacks, et cetera, so any kind of, you can, I think it's pretty self-explanatory if you sit down and just look through it as far as what ordinances are where.
I think it's
but-
part of that is trying to keep it updated.
Yeah.
It's on the website too. Your most recent copy is going to be.
Yeah, on the
Yeah,
website.
yeah.
That's where you want to
Right.
put the information.
Yeah.
And that'll be one of the notes that I make in this, that this would be a good idea to have on the website when we get the new website if it's
Yeah,
not there.
yeah.
So that we can submit a list and say these are the things that we want to have available
Yep,
to
okay.
people.
Property subcommittee, it's not usually that busy, but occasionally the city has surplus property that we have to dispose of. It is the council's subcommittee's responsibility to come up with at least, you can help me here, JP, at least recommendations. Do they come up with the price too? Do you come up with the price? or is it-
Sometimes, it depends,
Set the price or
minimum.
have a minimum price.
Yeah.
It's generally for real property, but
Mm.
I would imagine personal property could be an
Yeah,
issue that could
yeah.
get referred to the property committee. Generally, the city owns lots of property. Now, we also have the power of eminent domain. We can take property for
We've
public
done that.
purposes. We can sell property.
Easements.
We can take it, there are easements,
We only
there's
deal
land
with-
that we rent.
We only
lease.
deal with property we own. We're
Yes.
not involved in like,
No.
Management property.
what's, no?
No.
You're reading my mind incorrectly.
Okay.
I
Actually, I hate that when
can't
people
think
do
of the
that.
word. We don't deal in anything like, what's the word I'm looking for?
I don't know.
Marking a building as uninhabitable.
No, that's the building
That's the
inspector,
building-
health
building inspector, health
inspector,
department
health
will handle
department,
those
and all of
issues.
them, yeah, that do all of the codes.
Public safety, Counselor Hayes, you want to tell us what we did?
We work closely with members of the public who have situations where they think there should be like a speed limit situation, or a streetlight situation, or a parking situation. Anything that has to change the rules of the road, as long as it's not involving, anything that's like an immediate need as far as fire, police, and safety and whatnot. And it's also to kind of keep track that all of those things are actually happening when those ordinances go by. We are also working on rewriting our street acceptance protocol, which is this other piece that I brought in. This is kind of what we deal with, is a lot of, the money for streets and street repairs comes through what's called Chapter 90 money. And you'll learn what the different buckets of money coming from the state are. There's Chapter 90, there's Chapter 70, there's Chapter 50. So Chapter 90 is done, which has to do with how we repair our roads. So this is kind of a description of what those funds can be used for and what their funding formula actually is. So right now, we're working on a street acceptance protocol because it's based on the miles of roads that we have in East Hampton. And we have very old records, so we have a lot of roads that aren't accounted for, so we're missing out on a lot of, on 50% of whatever those roads are. Funding, so we're trying to get that through. Because you will find, regardless of what office you're running for, people just want to talk about potholes.
It's, the community's also responsible for stop signs, no parking signs, limited parking signs. We don't have any control over speed limits. That's
But we
usually
do
set
get
by the
requests.
state.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
We do
we
get
always get
requests.
requests to slow the traffic down or fill a pothole.
However,
and-
there could be calming
Yeah.
measures. that we could take
There
advantage
are,
of.
yeah, yeah.
The humps
Oh,
in the
okay,
road.
yep.
The curbs coming out for crossing
Berms and things
the
like that.
roads.
Okay.
So there are traffic calming measures that could apply.
Okay.
Which we tend to do very, very closely work with public safety, because those are decisions we make. Usually the police
Yeah.
suggest this would be appropriate.
And the
Okay.
Department of Public
And what we
Works.
do is we kind of hold the meeting and we invite, whoever had made the initial request to kind of look at speed. We'll invite, a representative of the police department, any other neighbors from there. The other thing that we do a lot of are telephone poles. Like anytime we
Yes.
have to change a telephone pole with Verizon or Charter or move one, it comes through public safety.
Mhm.
And it's important to go out and actually look at the physical area of the space and make sure that, these telephone poles are put in front of somebody's nice new, like, picture window and make sure that it's not gonna be you know,
Okay.
visually detrimental, so.
And then also is the rules and regulation. They pretty much, it's mainly dealing with our city council rules, which we'll go over briefly here as well. And occasionally we'll get a technical question or that will refer, like for instance, Councilor Hayes was asking about electronic agendas, so that would be, we said the rules and regulations, we'll discuss and just say, recommendation, and then we'll vote on it full council, so that's kind of an example of when it's from. I'll quickly go through the parts of the charter that relate to us, where the legislative branch, so it is the Article 2, right? I believe it's Article 2, and then a lot of this is pretty much, you may know, are self-explanatory. There are 9 members, 4 at-large, 5 precinct councilors, 2 years each. Basically, any voter who's over 18, or is it, yeah, 18 is right, electable. There is something in here as far as, I think it happens here where, nothing matters, but, if you left your term of office right now, you said, I'm out of here, and I think if it's within the first 18 months.
Don't give her any ideas yet.
Then they go back to, I think you have to get 30%
The
of
next
the
highest
highest
vote.
vote getter, but then if you got as far as like 6 months away from the new election,
We'd have
then
to
they
hold
just
another
take, I think,
election.
anyone, even though I think there's like 4 people's names. I mean, they have to be written in, but so hopefully that will not happen. The council president is,
I'd be worried about that.
some of this is duplicated with our city
Oh, no,
council
he's not going
rules.
Not
that
like
way.
the school committee.
He's
So basically, the city council president runs the meetings.
doing at least take a person here.
The president can't be a chair, is ex officio of every committee, and so if you ever have only 2 people there, then the president can be a voting member. Sometimes that happens with finance, if there's something important that someone can't make it, they want to make sure there's a full vote on it. The vice president basically is around in case that needs to, the president isn't there. We had changed it, for a while we had the vice president couldn't be a chair of a committee, but we changed that because it kind of limited the number of people we could have as chairs of committee. There's a little bit here that about, you can't have 2, you can't be paid by the government, so,
Right.
for the city, for 2 jobs, so you can't be,
Can't be the
I can't be the
assessor as
dog
well.
catcher
No.
and the city council, because all of a sudden, like, oh my God, I'm the animal inspector, but I'm like, oh, that's right, I'm not getting paid. So that's not a problem.
You can't hold 2 paid
Yeah.
positions.
Yeah, exactly. I said,
Paid.
oh, shoot. And then once you leave, you have 6 months.
Right.
Before you can,
And
Or
I
you
think to
can
go
take a
back,
position.
any city councilor can go to any
yes.
subcommittee meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Yes,
Oh,
and I
yeah.
strongly encouraged it too.
Yeah.
Because actually, that is one of the biggest, I often think, what must it look like the public watching some of our meetings? It must look like the Stepford Wives, so, yes, yes. Whereas the nitty-gritty, I'm like, what do you mean by that? Or, can you explain that again? That all happens at the subcommittee level. So a lot of people, I think, are disappointed how little discussion we see at the full council meeting, because most of it's been aired out. So, yeah, I would.
Yeah,
With
so-
only a small amount of people,
Mhm.
rather than, so, I mean, if you don't go to the subcommittee meeting, it's hard to actually get input
Yeah, okay.
into anything.
Because usually like for instance, if it's about a fire truck or if it's about a police car, that's where you can ask Chief McMahon, did you check, fuel efficiency on this
Mhm.
vehicle? That's where you can ask those questions. I
Yeah,
mean,
council.
don't get me wrong, at a public hearing, you could ask those questions too. So there's always opportunity at that public hearing, but most of those questions are asked during the meeting. We do get a stipend. The only big thing about that, every once in a while, I don't know if it's every term, we do
No, it's every,
ending in
Yeah.
0, every
Zero?
term ending in 0. Or
It's in here.
Charter review?
No, just about the salaries, because we just did
Salaries are
one. Every term.
every term.
You can do it
that's
every
You can do it
eligible.
every
you
term,
want.
right.
But you have to do it in the first 12 months of the term.
Right.
Okay.
Of the new term.
and it doesn't go into effect
And
if it,
doesn't go into effect until
till
the following
term.
term.
I'm
So
sorry, what are you
those who
talking
are
about,
voting on
changing
the
the
matter.
salary?
Yeah, if we wanted to change our
A
salary.
request to increase any of the salaries, school committee, city council, or mayoral, has to be done within the first 12 months of the new sitting council.
Mhm.
And once it's passed, it won't go into effect
Gotcha.
until the
Right.
following election.
Right. And that's to protect more or less from voting yourself
Exactly.
Right, and considering we have,
Exactly.
the two of you could be like, we're up.
That's
The two of you could just
exactly
vote
what
one
it
day.
is.
Do it.
Yeah, that's exactly why it's that way, yeah.
Okay, we just had mentioned the review of the, how often you review the money.
Oh, and you don't get to access any city benefits.
Right.
Your retirement will be put into what's called a OBRA account, and you can talk to the treasurer about that, but it's put into an OBRA account, which gains a little bit of interest and whatever, but.
Right.
You should have all the
So-
information about that when you speak with Barbara, because you have to sign on
Right.
things and sign everything, so there should be an explanation of the benefits such as they are.
Yeah, we don't get health benefits or anything else. That was
Yeah.
excluded out of the charter.
Yeah, I've already
Mhm.
talked to.
Yeah. As far as meetings go, it's the first and third Wednesday of every month up until May. June, July, and August typically are just the first Wednesday of the month. Occasionally, if we have difficult budget, we might take one of those Mondays in the beginning of the summer, but usually June, July, and August are just once a month. There is the option, which I think we used a couple of times, for special meetings. If we have a time limit that we have to cover, the council president actually even says here 3 or 4 members of the council can, in writing, request a special meeting. And there's, again, the requirements for having it are listed there. There's also another term, which you'll probably hear before your term is out, called an executive session, which is essentially usually when we are talking about something, personnel matter, something private.
Or property,
or
real property.
Yeah, where essentially
Buying
we
or
don't
selling.
necessarily want it to be in the press
Contractual.
immediately. And there's, again, a very
Negotiations of any
strict
sort.
rule or protocol of how we announce we're going to an executive session for this reading, for this reason. All those in favor, aye, we adjourn, we come in here. And then they are held private until a period of time. And there's requirements, like if it's a personnel matter, that person is still working there and may not ever be made public. But anyway, that's something.
Because we oversee some of the employees at City
Mhm.
Hall, there may be situations where we have to discuss, like.
Those 3 that we
you know,
are responsible for. the
Yeah,
assessor
it's like,
and the-
all right, there's been a routine tardiness, this is our policy on tardiness, we're gonna have to do a first written warning, we would have to do an executive session for that.
So
Because we
that's
wouldn't-
what the mayor was talking about last night for the assessors review.
Precisely.
6-month
Right.
review is in the files, we all have access.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
if we wanna go and take a
Okay.
look at it, because
Right.
anything involving human resources, you have to make sure is done privately.
Yeah, and it's sensitive issues too, like it wasn't directly human resources, but when we were, since it's been in the paper, when we were doing, Councilor Psychowski, we had an executive session to
Mhm.
see what would be the best way to answer it. So sometimes
Okay.
those things happen.
There should be a review period, which I'm not sure what that is, but technically you're supposed to review all executive sessions that are in the books to see if that can be released.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, I think you're probably correct there, I think what tends to happen more often, someone requests one. and
Yeah.
Check to see if it's.
Then you
Then
go
they
ahead- then you
review
go
it
ahead
and then they'll
review it,
release it, yeah. If it's something that, like, we were negotiating about a piece of property or something to buy and whatever.
Right. It's over, done deal, it's
Once
done
we
deal.
buy or sell the property and the deal is said and done, then any executive
Release everything.
meeting minutes become available to the public, they're released.
Okay.
I'm thinking of the personnel issues that may have occurred, or certain
Mhm.
things.
Some of those will never get
And-
released for
but
personnel
it
issues.
Could be a long, long time
Yeah.
before they're ever.
Okay. All right.
2.7, access to information. In general, we have access, as a whole body, we have access to a lot of different agencies, employees. If there's any information that we need to have, we have the right to ask that. We do, it needs to be done as a body, though. The city council needs to request
Right.
this versus an individual councilor saying, hey, I want you to do this.
And B, what Joy was just saying, so like, city council may require any city officer, member, agency, city employee to appear before it. I was saying that, we hadn't met the new city engineer, it'd be nice to have him come to city council and introduce himself.
Right.
Because nobody knows who he is or how to contact him.
Right.
Right now.
Is that the guy that came from Northampton?
Yeah,
Right.
Some of us will.
yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I love
Some of
them.
us, he's a good guy.
I
Right.
love them.
But it's
We
not,
should-
that's
we would
like
be
in a social
professional. It would be
sense, like.
professional.
It would be fine, it would
If
be.
the city has hired a new individual, they should present themselves before
Yes.
city council.
And while we're on.
Thanks.
While we're on the subject of different bodies within the city, there are certain bodies that basically can't be touched by us or even the mayor, and that would be the health department, Park and Rec. I think the board of Park and Rec.
I think that
board-
comes up, we might want to stick with the agenda.
Oh, does it come up too? Oh, okay,
Probably,
all right,
yeah.
all right, then.
Just to not like
Okay, that's
throw
fine.
too much
That's fine.
information,
Okay.
just to keep it
Okay, all right.
going with how it's
Okay.
going.
So,
So basically, it's 2.7 is we have the right basically to call almost anyone in front of us for information, but again, it needs to be done more as a body where we take a vote to request it versus individuals. As Joy and we had mentioned earlier, we have 3 appointments, the city auditor. It talks a little bit about the responsibility, or at least their terms right there. The principal assessor, who we just hired a new one relatively recently, and I haven't read the review personally, but I hear it's very good. The city clerk, of course, you all know, Barbara, we would be a mess without her. She's outstanding. And then she's also our clerk of city council, which gets reappointed, so that she takes our minutes.
But she doesn't have to be based on this, right?
No.
No.
It could be.
She does not have to be.
Yeah, right.
Why do you have a
because Barbara's always applied for it.
Yeah.
No, tonight.
Oh. We've never had a clerk at any of these meetings. We've always appointed somebody to take notes.
Yeah, I mean,
or whatever.
it's a good point. I mean, there's technically a city council meeting, which she is our clerk. All those other meetings are subcommittee meetings, which she's not the clerk, or the licensing board, she's not the clerk.
Right.
But I didn't think to ask her to come for this.
This
Well,
is off
this really isn't in a committee, though. So I don't know if we
It's a
would have to
public
take.
city
It
council
is,
meeting, yeah.
it is a public meeting, but it's, I don't know.
Yeah.
So,
Can I ask an
Yeah, of
off-topic
course.
question? And this is only because it just flied through my brain.
All right.
Do we have protocols about notifying each other when when you can't attend, when you're taking vacation, when you're gonna be away? Do we have some sort of a internal protocol?
Usually people just contact the president and
Okay.
just say, I can't make it.
And
you know,
what about vacations? Do we have to like give you, like?
You don't have to,
let you-
but it's probably easier
Okay.
to know, so that.
Just email
Yeah.
everybody and go.
You don't have to email, just email me, or Barb even, or Barb,
Okay.
just so we know.
Alright.
Yeah, we don't have a actual procedure or code. I mean, I suppose we could use what the city itself uses, but I'm not sure what their policy and procedures are.
Yeah.
I was just
But
curious.
yeah, I mean, it's typically, I would just let the city council president.
Yeah,
know.
and it usually has been, we've had a couple situations where it just was like 3 or 4 were going, we didn't have a quorum, or, not a quorum, we didn't have enough to pass anything officially, but usually so.
Very, very,
I
very
text
rare.
Smith because my car broke on the way there.
Oh, that was all I would think.
Yeah, I was like.
I just usually
no
throw a
idea.
text out to Joe and say,
Yeah.
I'm sick of not making it a meeting.
Okay.
Let everybody know.
So,
Is there an attendance, sorry
No.
to just keep with that, but is there an attendance, required attendance amount for city councilors?
There is.
For quorums,
And it's in
yeah.
here somewhere, okay.
No, in terms of.
No,
the
like how
actual
many
city
meetings you can
council.
miss.
If you miss a certain amount, like, you can be recalled. I can't remember.
Where did you see
where
that?
What's that one?
No, we never had that.
No,
No,
it's in
that's
here.
not in there.
I think I've read it.
Yeah, it's
A
in
while ago.
Yep.
Did that change after Wesley?
That'd be interesting to know. but
Yeah, I don't-
Anybody
That wasn't in the
ready?
original.
That wasn't in the
Yes.
original.
So just so we can move along, so we're
Yeah,
not.
sorry, Joe.
Oh, no, these are great questions, I just want to continue. So, emergency ordinances, I don't think I've ever been here for one where truly is an emergency, a true emergency where we needed to pass something immediately. This is a good point to mention. So typically, as anything comes in front of city council, which we'll talk, how did you do something to city council for you guys, it needs to go to subcommittee. There are a few exceptions.
Snow emergency.
Resolutions, usually something you can vote on, but the vast majority of things need to be referred to subcommittee before they can be voted on. And that is also, you'll sometimes hear the term first reading, second reading, and typically, and I know Councilor Hagan was very good at that, when all of us are subcommittee chairs and we'll get something and we'll talk about what it is, and then we'll say, I'd like to make a motion to refer it to subcommittee. That essentially is the first reading, meaning it's the first introduction of the topic. Counselor Hagan would really say, the first reading is, and it was a little easier for finance because it was a supplemental appropriation to do this, blah, blah, blah. And the second reading would be the final reading when you were voting on it. So those
Okay.
are 2 readings. Now, someone told me, Jen, maybe you come out, does Northampton have 3 readings? Is there
Yes.
something bizarre? Okay, okay, I thought it was something.
Can I derail us
No,
again?
no, of course.
On the agenda last night, I noticed on each item, there was like a date and then another
Mhm.
date in parentheses.
Oh.
So is that like the first time it was raised and then you pushed it out so it doesn't?
Yeah, so
Expire?
the first date you see there is the date it was recorded by the city clerk secretary of what it was essentially given to our agenda. The second date, the first date you would see there is 90 days later. Technically, all business should be completed within 90 days. However, there is nothing that prevents anyone to keep on asking for either 30, 60, or 90-day extension. There is not, they don't, I mean, after a while, you may say, whoa, that's like 3 years,
I mean,
but,
is that, you
yeah.
extend it out because you either A, haven't gotten enough information to resolve it, people haven't been around to
Right.
discuss it, blah, blah, blah.
And you will see, and I'm sure Jen will attest to this, that surprisingly getting information in a public municipal situation can be painfully slow
Okay.
versus in private
Yeah.
sector where it's pops around more.
Okay.
But yeah, more often it's like you're still accumulating information.
And when we only meet once a month for the summer,
Yeah.
if so-and-so isn't there, because they're, like, there's, it's just better to let it go on. There's sometimes with street acceptances, if there's snow on the ground, you can't see the street. So, it's like there's another 3 months. But that one took me a while to figure out as well.
So there are a couple of things, and I always get them confused, so let me introduce them, but I'm not sure exactly.
What section are you on, Jeff?
29B. There are at least two procedures, which are not used commonly, but I guess if you feel passionately about something, can be pulled out of your hat. One, if you are a member objects to taking of a vote, you can, I don't know what the term they use for, but you can ask for the vote not be taken. It has to be seconded by a second person. And then, I guess it's just by a second person, and it should be postponed until the next meeting of the city council, regular or special. And so when it says it is taken up for a vote, the next time, then you need 4 or more members to postpone that vote. And that can only be, can be posted not less than an additional 5 days. Again, you can read it more carefully, but just kind of introducing that there is this procedure. And it says here, should not be used more than once for any measure withstanding. There is another term called a reconsideration, which is literally after a vote has been taken, you can ask for reconsideration.
For the next meeting.
Which for the next meeting could be a revote. I think at one time it was said that it was from the majority vote, a person from the majority vote. But I think the last city council rules we changed it that either a majority or minority person, if someone wants that vote reconsidered, it can be postponed for another meeting. So again, I recommend, if that's something you have in your mind, to go back and read the procedure. I'm just
A
paraphrasing.
motion
it
to
here.
reconsider requires a majority vote.
Right, majority vote. So I just want to make sure that you're aware they are there.
Okay.
Speaking of another thing, this is actually in city council rules, but something I didn't realize, Councilor Hayes, when Councilor Kwasinski, you blew her away with your pass. Pass? What's a pass? I never heard of a pass.
Yeah, you did a pass.
Yeah.
You can pass on your
Yeah.
vote and see how other people are
didn't pass.
gonna.
No, you did, but we're saying that besides yay or nay,
Yeah.
and abstain.
And abstain,
There is a
pass. Called a pass.
Like, not interested.
Yeah, no, but
No.
you circle
Or
back.
you can
No,
see.
pass
Oh,
says
really?
you
I'm
do
still
that.
thinking about it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Basically.
30
Still
seconds, I'll
process.
make my
Right.
decision.
Yeah.
Right.
So it lets you go, if you're, like, you're number 3, and you said, I still need some thought, you can pass, and it's not abstain, you're out of it, you're saying no, but a pass just puts you back in the cycle to come back around.
Sounds like you're waiting to see what everybody else
That's
does.
Yeah.
exactly, and that was used, a real-life example of that was used by Councilor Hagan. We had a vote about, creating more liquor licenses.
And he was kind of sitting up on the fence.
And, yeah, he was a little back and forth about it. I think
Mhm.
he had a vote of conscience and a vote
Mhm.
of didn't want to hold up the city. But there were a handful of us who had to abstain because of work that we do with, and so there was a very small pool of people who could actually
One
vote
vote would have
on
meant
the
the
issue.
difference.
And one vote would have
So-
made the difference. So, he did a pass and then was
Also-
able to.
And at the end of it, he said, I don't want to be the one vote that makes the difference, so.
Yeah.
Any
he went
counselor
along
may
with the
change
vote.
his or her vote prior to the announcement of the total tally too.
Mhm. Yeah.
So if everybody's voted and it's,
3-2.
you were kind of like on the
4-4.
fence and you said no initially, but then you think,
So you can change.
maybe it's not worth that for me to do it that way. Maybe it's better that I just go along with it and say, yes, you can do it, but you need to do it and be recognized by the president before the tally's taken.
Well, he moves pretty fast.
No.
And I was gonna say, that's something that we've talked to Joe about. It's a style that he.
Slow your roll.
I was gonna say, it's a.
And he needs to slow his roll.
It's a good thing, it's a bad thing.
Wrist is right there next to him too. He's like right on it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So
Whispering in my ear the whole time.
It goes
Past
far
meeting-
too quickly.
Meeting minutes. at
And
least
even
80%.
people watching can't.
What just
keep
happened?
up with that. Yeah, it's.
That's good to know, thank you for that. I'm serious. No, I'm not joking.
We've
No, I
talked
know.
about- I don't mean
know.
that negatively.
I know, you're right.
You know, maybe count to 3.
Shoot, there was something, I must have left my rattle brain. I can't remember. So some of this, again, I was, some of this we talked a little bit about, but district counselor, if you leave your term early, there's, again, the whole, it's consistent with the whole thing.
He's in section 210, 211.
Yeah, 210,
He's now
211.
moving to 74.
474. Who says I go too fast? Petitions to school committee, I guess that's actually just because oh yeah, I know what I was gonna say. So publications are, as far as, there are a lot of state laws requiring legal notifications of things we're doing, public hearings. Barb takes care of all that, so she is aware of what topics we have. Number one, require a public hearing, and then number two, require advertisement. And so that's actually, I'm not sure if it's part of our budget.
It is part of our budget. I just
yeah.
looked at it recently.
What's the
Okay.
difference between public hearing and public speak?
Excellent question. Yes, public hearing is the official, which you'll notice that it's supposed to be at 6:15.
Yes.
We try to go a few minutes either, I try to go for 6:15, but if we go a little bit over, it's no big deal. We don't start before 6:15. Sometimes we maybe 5 minutes
Because
at
people have to
6:20.
have the opportunity to show up.
Exactly, and if they're planning a break or something for that time, they need to be able to count on that. So, but yeah, that is where the second reading happens, where we are going to vote on that object, on that topic. The chair tends to introduce
Yeah.
whatever it is, tends to give all the background information they have, accumulated during the subcommittee meetings. Usually you'll say, our subcommittee vote was 3-0 in favor, 2-1, or whatever it might be. And then, as part of public hearing, after the city councilor's chair speaks everything they want to say about a topic, then the president usually says, is there anyone here from the public who would like to address this topic? And then a lot of times, just out of courtesy, we bring any city officials who want to talk to it first, but then anyone from the public who may want to come up and speak to it. And then after everyone has spoken, then it goes back to that chair of that committee, and they do it in official motion. And then you'll see it's important. You can say, I'd like to make a motion that, or you can say, I am requesting this in a form of a motion. There's either way you can put that word, but it's important that you say motion in there somewhere of what you want to have done. But there needs to be a second, and then there is allowed more discussion amongst counselors. And this would, sometimes we get into trouble where, we have something somewhat controversial, someone makes a motion, a counselor seconds it, okay, now we're into the point where this is only theoretically for counselors. Then all of a sudden there's some question that Melissa has the answer for, we're like, oh. So occasionally we have had to go back up and say,
Remove
Counselor
the-
Hayes, will you
remove the
withdraw your
motion,
motion?
remove the
Yes, the
second.
you have to
Take it
back
off.
up so that person can come in. But we try to, make sure everyone has said their piece. But again, once we have that first and that second, we go around again for the counselors can say again their kind of closing thoughts on it. But then there's no more public at that point, and then we take the final vote, and that's it.
Does everything that goes through a subcommittee get a public hearing?
No.
So what makes it a public hearingable
Mass
thing?
general law.
Yeah, there's some, that's great questions. Those are great. Most of them are finance, and ordinances,
Like the telephone poles.
telephone poles.
Mhm.
They come up, that we're gonna do this, we'll
Yep.
set us up a public hearing, and we'll do that at the city council meeting prior. So if I'm giving a report on public safety, it'd be like, we're working on this, I'd like to set a public hearing for this telephone pole, because at that point, we've met, we've discussed, We've taken a vote on it as a subcommittee. We're ready to go
Just
to the
ready to hear
next
from
step.
the people.
Yep.
Okay.
And then what we usually do is we invite everybody who's involved in the subcommittee level, which would be, representative from Eversource and maybe the fire chief or the police chief or something like
Okay.
that. So that gives everybody a couple of weeks, and that also puts us in compliance with the amount of time we have to announce a public hearing before it happens.
Okay.
Almost all appropriations are public hearings.
Mhm. And ordinances.
When
Ordinances.
chapter 32B, the health insurance for the city employees was discussed, I believe there was a public hearing. I'm not sure if it was a
We had
requirement of the.
two
of the
public hearings. Sometimes,
legislature,
yeah.
Or just, it's a matter.
Yeah, that was, yeah.
Well, and
Just
you'll
had
see that at meetings, like, we'll even
Great
discuss it at
input
city
for the
council, be
city.
like, do I have to set a public hearing for this? And,
Barbara
Yeah,
will tell you.
Barbara's-
she's
Barbara
like
would
right
usually
on it.
knows,
Oh,
like
yeah.
appointments, we don't have to set a public meeting
No.
for.
Okay.
We could, at any given
You-
moment.
at any
you
given
could
time, you can-
Say, you
you
know what, this,
can.
this particular appointment seems to be contentious, we're gonna
Okay.
set a public hearing for it.
Okay.
Anytime you wanna have the public weigh in, or you feel it's a good thing to
Certain
do,
time.
to give it a couple of weeks and to allow more input, if you don't feel it's gotten, the attention that you can absolutely move that.
Okay.
Appropriations ordinances and things like that all have to be also advertised.
Right.
That's the biggie, is that those are the ones that have to have the public hearings, are the ones that are advertised per Mass General Law, so.
Yeah.
We're very prescribed.
Mhm.
And that's one of the
Not
things
before
we're
this,
looking
not
Barb
at.
before
takes care of that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, oh,
She
yeah.
does, and that's one of the
Thank
things
God.
that we're looking at in regards to going more electronic, is that the Attorney General's office has come up with a compromise, so that right now, our public hearings are posted on a newspaper that is behind a paywall. So
Yeah.
nobody can really see it. There's another website that lists all the public hearings, and those are available. But if you write a letter to the Attorney General, you can say that, we're gonna do it this way and comply, where that will be on our website. So that's something that we're trying,
That would
I'm
save a
trying.
lot of money.
I'm hoping it'll save us some
Yeah.
money, and it'll also make it more available to the public, because otherwise it's behind a paywall and it doesn't help anybody.
And not everybody
It's-
gets the paper, and not
No,
everybody.
not everybody gets the
I don't get it.
paper.
I don't get
So,
it.
And
I
then as we
mean,
discuss
I
this,
almost
I'm-
feel like sometimes we'd have
I'm
better
sure
luck
on the other
opening up
hand,
the
other
window
people
and
would say, I don't
yelling
use
that
the
we're
web,
having a
I
private
read the
hearing.
newspaper,
Yeah.
and I'd really feel left
If
out
it's
if
for
you didn't
bids or
took it out of the
procurement of
newspaper.
bids and things like that, it all goes up on the,
Yeah.
Oh,
the
right.
state
Right.
bid.
I think another example.
We're
when
just betwixt and
We didn't
between,
need
right?
a
Yeah,
public
can't
hearing,
wait.
was it the liquor licenses? I don't think we needed a
We-
public hearing.
no, we
But
didn't.
again, it was so controversial.
We
that
asked.
It made sense to include the public.
It's never a bad idea to invite
Yeah.
the public in
Yeah.
anything.
So, just 7.7, it talks about school committee, which is, Dan probably knows more than, I guess for me, the thing,
Can I just-
yeah, sure.
So 7.4 is districts. You'll notice that in East Hampton, we don't have wards and precincts, we have districts. So it's just the way that our particular form of government is structured.
But we're
And
called
allows us-
precincts, though.
They're districts, they're districts,
So why are we calling precincts?
that's you.
No, but I mean, it's the map, too.
Oh,
The
you know
map-
what, it is,
It's precincts.
It's precincts, and then it's districts and ward.
Oh.
Districts
We're
and wards
precincts,
is it.
though.
We're
Yeah,
precincts.
because precinct 2.
It's districts and wards on the other one.
So your precinct count, okay.
Right.
Yeah,
Precinct two,
yeah.
yeah.
I
Precinct
usually
3.
write
It doesn't
precincts.
sound as good.
Yeah.
Why
But
the
it-
district then?
It's something about how our particular form of mayoral government is structured, and it's when.
It was how the charter
Mike
was
Todd-
structured.
Yeah, when Mike Tosnick did it, but that keeps us away from.
Precincts.
Wards, and I think it's based on
yeah.
population, like we just kind of
Okay.
squeak in
Mhm.
as a city.
So
and
what is
it's
a
good.
district broken up into wards?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Just, I think a district is like literally an area, whereas the precinct is the voting
Oh.
part of that.
Mhm.
So we probably have 5 districts and we have 5 precincts. The precincts refers particularly to the voting section of that
Mhm.
district.
That makes sense,
Um,
but we don't have wards.
Right. The thing too, I'll just mention it because I know it was a thing to me, is how independent the school committee is from us.
That's
You know,
like separation of
yeah,
church and state.
Yeah, it's very different. We,
No, it is, seriously.
we appropriate the money,
That's it.
a percentage of it, actually a significant percentage of our budget, like 60, 70% goes to education.
66.
But we give it to Dan, and then we never see it. And we have no say.
We
We
used
say
to
no
give
more.
it to
What goes
Dan.
on to Dan, yeah.
Dan no longer
Yeah,
has a
so-
vote
But a lot
on
of
it.
people that I've talked to that have been recently elected to the school committee do want to have more of a relationship with city council. And
Yeah.
try and go back and forth. I know you've reached out to them before in the past, and everybody was thrilled because they were like, city council never even talks to us.
Yeah.
So,
Joe, districts, before we move on, do you know when the last time they were reviewed to?
Yeah, it was
Just
a couple
recently.
years ago.
Cool.
I think it has to do with the census.
Yep.
And there were some minor tweaks between us, but
Yeah,
most of
because
them-
we finally met the 16,000
Right.
criteria,
Right.
which
Right.
officially put us into prevailing wage status
Yeah.
now. So any bids or whatever that go out definitely have to be under prevailing wage, so the
Oh.
labor has to set wages.
Okay, so we'll go through the city council rules pretty quickly, because obviously you have them, they're not, I don't think they're difficult to understand, and as you can all read. So, yeah, it talks about the responsibilities of the council president, running the meeting. You know, the president can vote on the subjects, dictates the agenda, dictates who can speak when.
He's on Rule 5A.
Oh, I'm sorry, okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry,
Saying
I will
half of a
say.
sentence.
I know, that's why I get this quoted so commonly, it's why I just got.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like your inside voice is maybe not your outside.
Yeah, I know. Exactly.
The meetings are scheduled, but they're basically the first and third Wednesday of every month, except for June, July, and August are the first, so.
Right.
So 5A, they do mention briefly our regular city meetings, special meetings, which are if we have some kind of deadline that we need to call quickly outside, you know, there's a protocol for that as far as noticing. Executive sessions, they talk a little bit about you go into after first convened in open session. And we know, Barb gives me this thing you have to read, citing why we're going to executive session. There has to be a vote. Again, the meeting schedule we talked about being the first and third Wednesdays. Filing deadlines, this is really good. We're talking a little bit, I know, because Jen and everyone mentioned that, well, how do I even submit something, even if I had a great idea? So, backing up, I guess, the way you submit something, there's just two main ways. One, any city councilor can submit something to be looked at or addressed. So now that you're a city councilor, if there's something that comes to you and says, I think this is something we should look into, literally type it up, and you can make it sound nice, dear city council, I would like to, please submit this to blah, blah, blah.
I was gonna print that out and then it didn't make any sense to me because you couldn't add your own data to it. So I keep all of that in a Google document, so I can send you like a document and also a link to it. But let me show you an example of it. I mean, this is what I use as just a template. Exactly, because I'd asked Barbara for a template, but we didn't have anything.
Right.
And they can be as short or as long as you wish.
Mhm.
I have one on my desktop, but because it's done in so I just have it under city council letterhead. But if you look, it just has our seal and then everything on it. So this just has the date, and it's to Dear City Council, because you're presenting it to the rest of City Council. This one says, I would like to request that the Public Safety Subcommittee add the Paul Street extension request for street acceptance back to the agenda. Because it was something I put towards back to planning board, and I wanted to bring it back in.
Okay.
And then submit it. So it really as simple as it can be.
Does Barb get copied on this too?
Oh, she
Yeah.
gets
Yeah.
it, she gets it.
Yeah.
Because
What
that
I
goes in the-
do.
Oh, we just send it to her and she'll get it to us, or we
She
copy
puts it in the
everybody?
agenda.
In the packet, yeah, so she.
Okay.
Right, so that's what we're talking about, is trying to get this stuff digitally. I always make it a PDF and send it to her, so that way a PDF can get forwarded to your email, so that you know before you walk in the door that this stuff is happening. Gives you a little.
Can she take a PDF?
Shit.
Although we did discuss this, that you can even be an email. It can be an email. I mean, you can
Yeah.
already say here, I would like to please add to the agenda,
Yeah.
so it doesn't have to.
CC the
be-
I'm
It's easier to,
compulsive
like, save that,
and
though.
file all mine.
Yeah.
Right.
So.
Email's gone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
And the thing too is, it's supposed to be, if you want something for the meeting on a Wednesday, you should try to get it to Barb like that Thursday before,
Yeah, it's
5
cut off,
days.
it's
Yeah.
Thursday.
Now, you will always see, you'll walk in, there's like 2 or 3 more papers on your desk, and so it's things that come in late. Like, for instance, that second letter we had last night was late, but I was like, no way am I waiting 2 weeks to address this one.
I'm getting it
So,
over with.
this is being introduced tonight. So occasionally you'll see, and sometimes finance things come in that we need, there's a time thing. So it's not written in stone, but for the general routine things, you try to do that ahead of time. The agendas, are they ready? The packets are ready Friday?
Thursday.
Thursday.
Well, that's one thing, I mean, you
Usually
guys
they
are
have to
aware
be
of the
ready by
hours that City Hall
Thursday.
has, right? That we're not open
Because we're
Monday
not
through
open
Friday.
Friday.
So there are people in the office here, my understanding is until about 7 PM on Thursday, isn't Thursday?
Something like that.
Something like 5.
Yeah.
Everybody left, I think at 5 o'clock on
5.
Thursday, 6
Yeah.
o'clock on Wednesday.
Is
Okay.
Wednesday the
Okay.
later day?
Fine.
But obviously, with your key, you can come in
Fine.
anytime.
Does she email it to you?
We're
The
working on that.
agenda, no.
Right now, it's just,
I think I got it.
it's in your mailbox.
You did, the agenda
Did I imagine
is
it?
now, the city council agenda is put up on the website now, and
Yeah.
that is done by Barry, who is our solo IT guy here. But that is part of the request that Joe and I put into Rules and Reg, so that all of the city councilors will receive the agenda and all the information in their packet via email electronically, so that you have a chance to kind of look at it, do any research you need to before you walk in. Because I honestly have been, okaying minutes for the past year, and I get them 2 seconds before I sit down, So I saw some discrepancies in the minutes, and I was like, this just doesn't work for me anymore, because I didn't even have a chance to read them, So,
But they are available 5 days before the meeting.
They are available 5 days before the meeting, starting on Friday after Thursday.
So,
So it'll be Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday,
Tomorrow,
Tuesday.
For yesterday, our event.
no.
Oh.
5 days before our next
Our
meeting.
next
Wait,
meeting.
Yeah.
2 weeks in. So don't come here next Wednesday. Oh, actually, you do have to be here next Wednesday,
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
finance.
5 days before the next meeting. She cuts off the agenda on Thursday.
So, again, and there is another way people, you'll sometimes get in a petition where, I can't remember the number of signatures.
It's
that are required, 100 signatures. So the citizens can put together a request to have something looked at, and put together a petition, which is enough to be introduced into the council.
And that's the naming of the boardwalk as an example.
Yes.
A petition brought by citizens.
Yes.
Yeah. And what's, just as an aside,
Yeah.
that's been since
Yeah,
summer.
we're looking, it's strictly written out, there need 5 people, 3 by the mayor, 2 by me, or vice versa. And I think so far we've had 2 or 3
To speak
things
about
who sent in their names. One person is from Southampton, as much as we think would be, I don't think it's necessarily appropriate for someone from a different sound to be on it.
Oh.
wait, to be on, you're putting
The name
together a
committee.
naming
Or
committee?
the boardwalk for the naming.
Oh, so, I know I'm kind of derailing this. So that particular line item, to name it after the former mayor,
Mhm.
is now turning into, what are we gonna name it, committee?
Always.
Or-
Yeah.
So we can't just say, okay, let's name it that. We have to say, we wanna name it something, so let's
Mhm.
put
Well, it's already
committee together.
named, I think we'll be renaming it. I think I don't know if it's officially named, but it refers to the Nashawanack Boardwalk.
So there will be a committee put together to give it a name. One of the options is to name it after the former
There will be
mayor
a
and his
committee to
wife.
Yes.
discuss.
But it
that.
could come up being.
The recommendation could be
the
no.
Blue Bonnet.
No, yeah, or for instance, if Mike writes a letter and says, I appreciate the effort, but
Not
I am not
interested.
comfortable with that.
Yeah, okay.
I think that would be,
So-
that may be a recommendation in light of his letter, we don't.
So anything like that where citizens come forward and say, I think this needs to be green instead of blue,
Mhm.
we have to open it up
Mhm.
to everybody to say, or maybe it should be yellow.
Mhm.
Pretty
And let
much,
them,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah. I mean, it happens twice usually. The public say, at the subcommittee level, the public can come in and say, I want it yellow, and then the subcommittee votes on it, moves to full city council, and then if it is a public hearing type of thing, then the person comes back up again and says, I still think it should be yellow, and then there's the votes.
And the other petition we got was for the funding for the community center. I wasn't sure that we had done that, because we were already talking about the community center funding, and it was already being discussed by city council. So that petition had come in on top of it. So I think it just got folded into the discussion,
Yeah.
rather than addressed as a petition from the community, which I wasn't quite sure. I wasn't quite sure if that was
Yeah.
correct or not, but.
My interpretation at the time was, number one, because it was already discussed, so it's not like we would refer to committee to be discussed, because we were already discussing
Mhm.
the funding of that. And then, as Jen knows, there was one line that I don't see how we could accept it, because it said, we recommend you ignore the law. Which I don't know if we can pass that.
Right down to it.
But, so 5E, order of business, you'll see, this is typically the way the meeting goes, roll call, pledge of allegiance, which is Pledge of Allegiance, was just introduced 2 years ago. Approval of minutes, public comment, again, and this, this, referring to your public, this is when anyone from the public can go up and speak to anything they want to, except that what's on the public hearing. So if we have a public hearing about that stop sign, someone
gotta
can't come
wait.
up and talk about the stop sign. You have to wait. The big thing that is really important to know and to understand, and for the public, and that's again why I mentioned again before that letter last night, is the fact that we can't respond is not because we don't care. It's because we can't, because the public didn't know that someone was going to talk about Confederate flag tonight. So, someone said, well, man, if I had known that, I would have been there. So we have to say, thank you for the information.
Yeah.
You can't, or sometimes we had situations where I think it was Fort Hill, actually, where
Yep.
that started.
Yeah, it was
Someone
Fort
came
Hill.
up and it was a public hearing, I feel frustrated because this isn't being addressed. We can't talk about it now, but your district counselor is Counselor Hayes.
Yeah.
So that's how it goes. A comment or a request from Counselor Hayes and probably Smith from the communications from elected officials, boards, and committee to give a little time for precinct or even at-large counselors. I mean, sometimes, again, I look at those, do I have any more to say? Do I have any more papers? I move right on. But to give some time for any precinct counselors if they have a report they'd like to say. So I think that's where we'll expand that and take.
Yeah, I mean, what I was thinking about that is that, like, my precinct too, there's a lot of businesses that open, and I'd like to be able to say, we welcome, so on, blah, 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 coming in. We've had, High Street finally got paved, we're really excited about that. And that actually engages the city councilor with their district, so that, they're kind of paying attention and contributing something to what's actually going on in the community. And I think it would just, show that the city council is paying attention to what's going on. And to just, just run down the line real quick and be like, do you have anything else? I think.
No, I think it's great because number one, I think it's nice for serving the community to announce your business, but also then it becomes a responsibility for the counselors to be aware of what's going on. So
Yeah.
that's good.
And I think for me, as an at-large counselor, rather than having to figure out
Right.
do that on my own, to have that, this is coming down the pipeline, just be
Right.
aware of that, I think that'll be a really
This just
good
happened in
aspect.
2, or this just happened in 1.
right.
Yeah.
Mayor communications at every meeting, actually technically every even subcommittee meeting should have a mayor communications as part of their agenda, although obviously probably finance is the only one she is regularly at, but if it's a hot topic, she'll be at property, she'll be at appointments, she'll be at ordinance, whatever it may be. Then, council communications.
I'd like to go back for a minute.
Sure.
To go to correspondence, because I think that usually gets overlooked, but with the email from last night, I just want to make sure. So if we were to get an email from a resident and reply to it, would we have to put it in correspondence, just to clarify that?
Actually, Barb had just said to me that there was actually something I'll pass out too. There's very little, we haven't even talked about open meeting laws, but there's very little, surprisingly, on email stuff, even today. But a lot of the city clerks are really suggesting that any kind of email communication, either make it electronic or PDF or hard copy, to have on the record, just to make sure that, because you have to remember that any kind of communications you have are, permanent and can be called upon at any time for you to cough up, which is another reason why I wanted to get back to just having a city email,
Right.
because right now it's intermixed with my personal, and like, how am I gonna find some of these
Yeah,
things sometimes, so.
One of the habits I've gotten into, to go back to the Fort Hill, there was a lot of email communication with different residents, and they were meeting, and they were doing certain things, and they were writing letters. So, I just got into the habit of blind copying or, forwarding to Joe, just so that it's like, I've got an extra set of eyes on,
Yeah.
Everything that's going on. But you're gonna get complaints, if somebody's complaining about their neighbor, they're not going to want their name posted
Nope.
publicly about a news thing, so,
If it's one counselor and a resident, and it's just between the two of you that you're having that conversation,
Then I think it's up to
that's,
you and that
that's,
person to
that's
decide
up
whether
to
they
you,
want.
whether or not you want to
bring it to
release
the-
that or not. If it involves, like, the emails that we've gotten where they've CC'd all of us,
Mhm.
that's public record.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they do more than 2 on an email, then that now becomes public record. But if it's just one-on-one, and you're just, just trying to sort things out, you're asking them questions, like, well, I don't really understand what the issue is. Can you further explain it to me so I can understand it? Or why don't you pick up the phone and call me? We can have this discussion, things like that. That doesn't become public record unless somebody really wants to push it, but.
Yeah, I mean, I've gone out because
just
people are like,
personal.
pothole, you know, I
Personal.
just hit a pothole in Parsons, and I'll go out to Parsons, take a look at it, call back, and be like, yeah, that's totally a pothole.
Right. I totally agree with you.
Yeah, it's a pothole.
There's some monsters.
I get it.
So under nine,
Lot of code here.
the committee
Hard to
reports.
understand.
So you see again, and under, on your agendas, you have all the committee reports. So like this one, rules of government relations, and then you'll have the chair. You don't have this, but it's just an example. It's just like any kind of typical agenda. It's listed, and the chair isn't listed there, but the chair, the council knows what the chair will say, Councilor Hayes or Councilor Winnie or whatever it may be.
One of the things that was good when Counselor Smith and I started is that on the boards, they let us, you know, every now and then, like, do you want to do this? Because you'll have to sit in for somebody, so you can absolutely do the report from whatever committee that you're on. So it's sometimes easier when you,
I'll lock it up.
it's,
Yeah, I'll lock it up.
Nice.
it's sometimes easier when you do it yourself rather than listing, you know.
Okay, yeah,
So,
yeah.
and Barbara's really good if you have a motion coming up. She'll actually write you a script.
Yeah, if it's a complicated one,
You
yeah,
know,
sure.
so you're like, let me write
That's
that down,
awesome.
because you have to kind of like, okay, so we're gonna be changing Mass General Law 5.0245 to /B, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
and it'll all be written down, so.
She's awesome.
Yep. And then, so old business, what's the definition of that?
Like business that just has, like, I think is there an example here of one? Old business. Okay, yes, for instance, old business is the naming the boardwalk in honor of Tossing. So that it was introduced to form a committee. We don't have enough people yet to create the committee, so it's just kind of still sitting there waiting to go forward.
Now, that's good information, what you've got sentence there, we don't have enough people to form a committee. Can we not say that during the meeting? Like, we just kind of fly over it,
Yeah,
and like that one sentence would
Right.
have helped me.
yeah,
I would have been like, oh, I get it.
yeah, why that's,
So,
right.
so instead of just jumping over it, can we just add that, the reason this is old business, we haven't gotten to it yet, is because
Yeah, well, I do say we're still accumulating names, I think I said, we're still accepting
Would you?
names. I think
Okay.
maybe at 60 miles an hour.
I can hear you
So
say
I'll
that.
probably slow it down.
Okay, then.
yes.
But my ears may be attuned to
No,
the
you're
double
right.
speech.
Yes.
And then new business is
Yeah.
where that, like, letter about something coming in. What we'll do is we'll sometimes fold in new business into our committee reports, because you'll see that.
Mhm.
And they'll be like, oh, there's a pothole situation. So as part of my report for public safety, and I will also make a motion to move a request from so-and-so into the public safety subcommittee and just take care of it under that.
Okay.
A lot of times you'll see
It can happen
actually
two ways.
that, like, Joy will ask me a lot of times, do you want me to do new business? Because it seems a little bit, to me, a little crazy to have appointments, go through the whole meeting, go back to appointments just to say, can I move these 5 people? Now, sometimes, it depends where we are, usually in relation to when we have to open that public hearing.
Right.
Because if it's getting close, then I'll say, we'll come back to it. But
Yeah.
if we have time, or we're already past it, then I just prefer just getting all the appointments out of the way. So she'll do her report, and then she'll go to new business and say, and also I have these 5 appointments.
Gotcha.
So the new business will literally be the pieces of paper that come with your agenda, besides your agenda. So it will say, you know,
Stuff
it'll say an
covered.
appropriation, and then there'll be a little piece of paper talking about that appropriation.
Okay.
5G, mayoral communications, again, that's when the mayor gives, you know, basically whatever she wants to speak about. I think it's a great opportunity, if you have any questions, to ask the mayor. It's a great opportunity to do that there. Our parliamentary guidelines, we follow Robert's Rules of Order, and I know Tamara just made a photocopy of this nice little, you know, short one. These are great because if you ever, which I tried to do at one time, they are extensive, and there's all kinds of sub-things going on. It is pretty basic. You know, we go with the motion, the second, make a motion to amend a motion, and then typically, not that you care right now, but if someone makes a motion to amend a main motion, you address that amendment first.
Okay.
So if JP says, I want to amend it to yellow, we say, okay, we'll take a vote. Is there a second? Okay, we'll take a vote on who wants it yellow. then
It
it
can get a
passes or
little
fails.
confusing and
so it goes
complicated
back.
when you
But
start
anyway,
adding amendments.
But that is pretty much it. I mean, I think we're usually motion second and motion to amend. I mean, occasionally.
Motion and a second, and then a discuss, and then we make a second motion. You do get another opportunity to talk about something.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the right. So there will be that discussion in between those things. I'm trying to think of like, what do they call them? Parliamentary things you can say. Occasionally, we've had someone call a question.
Call a
So if
question.
someone thinks that this is going way too long discussion-wise, I just want to take a vote on it, you can call a question. And then that has, and I think they talk about,
Two-thirds vote.
parliamentary levels of, like,
You have to vote on it.
yeah.
You have to vote on
If someone
it.
calls a
Whether or not
question, you have to.
Call a question.
You have to do it.
Okay.
And it may fail. People say, no, it doesn't, someone may say, no, I still want to hear the discussion, but maybe you'll say, yeah, I've had enough discussion too, let's move it. So I think knowing Robert's rules are great, but don't feel like, oh my God, I need to know the subcommittee of the sub-amendment of the sub-amendment, because it is pretty in-depth.
Okay.
And, Salem Derby is going to be the vice president of city council now, and maybe as we go along for the first couple of meetings, we can make sure that we're kind of, giving people time to like understand and then react,
Yeah.
because there are some that are very kind of routine for the most part.
Yeah.
Right.
But
Is it, from a protocol perspective, and I don't know if Dan feels this, but because of the speed at which everything is going, is it okay for any of us to go, what's
what's the opposite of call?
What's the opposite of slow your roll or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
Right. So are you calling, like if someone makes a motion, we're so attuned, if it's someone straightforward, just to say second. It almost becomes like who can say second first.
Right.
So I don't know how you can slow the motion to
Well-
the second, because once the motion is made, I don't.
To make the motion, you can't even talk about the motion until it's seconded.
Right.
So-
So once it's seconded, though, can you say what, I don't understand what
He
this
could do a
motion is
roll
for?
call vote, because there's been a couple of times where I've
Yeah.
been like, I'm not sure, and it's like and it's done.
Any
You know,
counselor can
like-
call a roll call
Yeah,
vote.
Yeah, but if we did roll
Well-
call votes that way,
What does that mean?
that means you ask each individual counselor what their vote is in order, like,
Right.
pass,
Instead of-
pass,
instead of
pass.
just
So
yay
it gives you
or
time
nay.
to actually respond. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm marked down as a yes, and I haven't even said or moved
Right.
anything,
If
So
you're,
where are
if
you
you're
look-
talking about during the discussion?
Yeah, where are you looking for the
I-
time? Yeah.
All I'm asking is there an opportunity during all of this for an interjection of, I don't know, I don't understand what this motion is for, I don't
Oh, yeah.
understand what.
No, so then
Yeah, that's during the
then the
discussion.
discussion. So someone makes a motion, I think the sky is yellow. I second it, and so then there is discussion. I'll say, Counselor Winnie, and she
You
said,
raise
no,
your
I think
hand.
it's blue. Counselor Hayes, raise your hand.
Okay.
And so then it becomes discussion, and that's when you could say, I think it's this.
Why are we talking about the sky?
Right,
Mm-hmm.
exactly. Call the question. That's when the discussion, but, yeah, and we've had some discussions go for quite a while. So you can, as long as, if you have a question you think you need to have answered, just don't feel like I can't.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but you could also be like, Council President, could you slow down, please?
Yeah, oh, please, yeah. I don't take
Honestly,
Okay.
I mean,
Okay.
Also, I'm gonna reiterate, once the question is put to the city council and we're in deliberations on a question that's been made or a motion's been made and seconded, no one outside the city councilors can add to that conversation. So if we're in the middle of a conversation, you think you need more information from somebody outside of either the chair of the committee or whatever, you can't get it unless we
you can
rescind.
absolutely get it, but
You
we
can-
have to rescind.
You
the
have to
other motion.
rescind the motion and rescind
Well,
the
the
second.
chair of the committee you
The
could,
chair.
because it's still part of the.
Yeah,
still-
usually the chair usually has the answers.
But
'Cause
at
they're
no
well
point
versed
are
in
you,
whatever, but-
there's no like point of no return. You can always come back. You can
And
be
then-
like, I just don't like it,
Right.
and you can blow the whole thing up.
And Jen
Done that.
is the perfect person to listen to, because from day one, she
No
was the
fear.
chair. And she was just mumbling her way through this.
I
but she
totally
did.
did. Remember telling you, I was like, don't correct me in front of everybody. I'm just learning.
Yeah.
You were fine. You
Yeah.
had lots of
I thought I even
support.
said good job. I thought
I
even
did
said-
say, you did say, but there were a couple of times where it's like,
So, Rule 6F, this is what I talk about reconsideration. So even after a vote had been taken, you can ask for a reconsideration, basically a new vote. And let me say, I'm trying to think, does that need to be second, or can it just strictly happen?
What's that?
A vote to reconsider, a motion to reconsider. Oh, requires a majority vote.
Majority.
Okay. So, so regardless of if there was a vote that one happened and you didn't like the way it went, or you thought you would have voted differently if you had more information, then you can ask for a reconsideration.
Well, so if that doesn't make any sense.
No?
In Robert's rules, the motion to reconsider is made by one person, and I believe must get a second. And
Mhm.
then the item goes to the next meeting,
Mhm.
the next meeting. There's no vote at the first meeting where the reconsideration took place, where there has to be a majority, because it doesn't make sense to have a majority vote on something and say, this is really to
Right.
protect the minority's interest for reconsideration at a
Right.
future meeting. So if there's a majority, a minority that says, okay, I'd like to have this reconsidered at our next meeting, and there's a second, all it would take is a majority at
Right.
the first
Yeah, no, I
meeting to
think-
say, we're not gonna discuss this later.
No,
That
you're
doesn't
right,
make
your
any sense.
chances of getting stuffed on
Right.
that are pretty high.
Pretty high,
Yeah.
so if it's really to protect the minority interests, I think we ought to refer back to Robert's rules on this, which allow for 1 and 2 to go.
Yeah.
Says
Well, I think it's
no
even in the
majority.
charter, I think I just read the charter that we
Oh,
had it,
sorry.
that as long as a person made a
Well,
motion and it was
at
seconded.
any
it was
meeting in
enough.
which a vote has been taken, any counselor may move for immediate reconsideration or may serve notice that the motion for reconsideration shall take place at the next regular meeting of the
So
council.
serve notice.
The vote of reconsideration shall be open for debate, which shall be limited to 20 minutes. A motion to reconsider requires a majority vote. Reconsideration may be moved by any counselors regardless of how the counselor voted on the first vote.
That's in
I'd
our
like to make a
rules.
motion
But I think
that
we need
we
to look at that. Yeah, all I'm
take
saying is that we
a,
need to look at
I
that.
know, right? I'd like to take a motion that we put Rule 6F reconsideration on a list to move to Rules and Regs Subcommittee.
Second.
To-
Okay.
To what?
There you go, that was real. Oh, I guess I'm the chair. All those in favor?
But wait, that's so wrong.
This is a perfect example.
Where's the discussion?
I never could
Wait, what?
finish my sentence.
I know, okay.
So I'm gonna make a motion that we have a running list of stuff that we'd like to maybe move towards rules and regs, to take a look to make sure that these, the city council manual and the city council rules are up to snuff. And the first item that I would like to put on this list for the rules and regs subcommittee is the reconsideration, Rule 6F.
Okay.
Second.
So,
Okay, so now there's a first, and now I should say, is there any discussion? Do you have something to say, Councilor Smith?
No, I just wanted Jen to finish her sentence.
Okay. Is that so bad?
Find it, I was looking for it in the charter.
Yeah, the charter
The
is
Charter
different.
8.6 says it says we may review it on every year that ends in 0 and 5. Did that
Okay.
happen in 2015?
Yes.
Yes, and we decided not to give ourselves a raise.
Yes.
No, not about salary.
Oh.
The whole charter,
But
the whole
let's
charter.
go back
ordinance
to
is
review.
rules.
I think the charter was you every 0.
I'm not looking for a raise, guys.
I was really quick there. All right, you wouldn't get it your second day anyways.
No, I
so-
wouldn't.
I thought the charter reviews on years ending in 0.
At least once in every 5 years, and every year ending in a 0 or in a 5, the council may, so it's not shall, but provide a review of all ordinances of the city.
So we did it in 0, I remember.
do we have a motion on the table?
Yep.
Yes, we do. But we're on
On
discussion.
point of order, point of
Yeah,
order.
exactly.
Point of
Well, it
order.
pertains to the motion, because if we're gonna review, if the whole thing needs reviewing anyway, do we need the motion for?
Okay,
to
that's a
review
good,
at
but
6?
we're talking about the city council rules.
And not the
You're
charter.
on the charter.
Right, the rules, not the charter. The rules can be
They're separate issues.
separate from the
Alright.
charter.
Rules you can change not really easily, but rules are something we
They
can
have
change.
to follow what's in the
They-
charter.
wrote
They
these
can't, they
We did.
can't
So
wrote
we
those
can-
rules.
Right.
abstain,
charter
you know,
or
it's
others.
kind of like,
That is
Mass General Law
No,
doesn't
it's
trump
city, but it's like our
federal law.
constitution.
Federal law
Okay.
always
Basically,
trumps.
It's like our form of government.
So the charter always trumps whatever rules we might come up with. The charter is the Bible.
Yeah.
Just like federal government trumps Mass General Law.
So we can't just decide every year to review the ordinances, because that is saying every
No,
year
we
that ends
really
in
can't.
0 or 5. At least 0 and 5.
But back to the
Point
motion
of
on
order.
the table.
Yeah.
Right, those are the technically is the motion on the table. So there was a motion, a second, to submit request to have the reconsider Reconsideration, Rule 6F.
As part of
That's
a
what-
general review of the
Right.
rules of the council.
Right.
So are we
As I
agreeing to a
understood the
motion
motion.
that we're going to say, let's open up all of the rules for review? And we've already found one that needs review?
Well,
Or are we saying very specifically, let's go to this one?
See, what I like to do it piece by piece, because if we wait to do the whole thing, 6F may never get addressed, or maybe a year before they get addressed. So
Right.
I like doing pieces, so at least you make sure 6F is done, and then if we find more, continue on, but.
That was kind of
Because
my
we can-
intention with the minutes. I was like, I'm gonna kind of take a list of these kinds of things that are popping up, and that seems to be the first one, unless somebody found one that I missed.
Counselor Wing.
In page 8 of the parliamentary procedures at a glance, reconsider a hasty action. I move to reconsider the vote on blank. May you interrupt the speaker? Yes. Do you need a second? Yes. Is it debatable? Yes. Can it be amended? No. What is the vote that is needed? Majority.
Huh.
Can it be reconsidered? No.
I still think we need to review it.
Yeah. It wouldn't hurt. I mean, we may say,
That's
yeah,
your
that's fine
Robert's
the way
Rule
it's
of
written.
Order, so.
Right. But I know it's weird. I could have sworn
Can
I
I
saw
call?
something in the charter.
Like in poker, I get to
There's
call,
another-
right? And we make it, that's what it comes from?
Oh, maybe.
I'm gonna call.
So I don't think it would hurt to put this on the list and to review it. I
Yeah.
certainly would be in favor.
Okay, well, we have a motion and discussion, and so this is real-life city council here. So,
You just made it sound
Is
like
there
an
enough?
MTV reality show.
Totally a
When things start getting real.
Yeah.
Could be a long 2-year dream, but it's over.
Finally, it's paying off.
What it's really like.
Sorry.
Yes. No, is there any more discussion? So, okay, now, all those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, you got that good?
Could
So
you
I think
ha-
it was, there you go, 7-0? Sorry. Go ahead.
Could you have called, could you just give the example to us so we can all hear it, if you wanted it to be a roll call?
Oh, yeah, then, as we said, well, there's a first and a second, and a motion, there was discussion, and then
I could have said roll call vote, please.
yes, I mean, even if I had said,
Or he
all,
could have
all those in
said, I want a
favor,
roll
even
call
just
vote.
then, somebody could say, wait, a minute,
Request a roll
I
call.
want a roll
So
call.
anybody can request.
And so, you'll see on some controversial issues,
Because you want it in the minutes who went which way.
yeah, exactly,
Mhm.
or just so, or just, so there's not a confusion, was that 4 and 5, or 5 and 4, so.
If you are not gonna vote on something, do you have to verbally say I
Yes.
abstain?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
Otherwise, Barb counts you as a yes.
Yes.
pretty much.
Okay.
Well, no, I think she would know that she's missing somebody.
Really?
She may or may not.
Oh, well, I mean, if
Not if it's a
it was a
general
voice
vote.
vote, no. If it was a
Okay.
voice vote, she would notice I didn't hear Peg say yay. She would,
Yeah.
so I think she's probably looking more for how many nays do I hear and where did they come from?
Okay.
But obviously a roll call vote, she would be way down.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
No, but that's what I was saying, like, when we, do city council, maybe it would help to do like roll call votes so that you can see how everybody's doing things for a little while.
Okay, so actually, Rule 8A, that's where it talks a little bit about the roll call vote. Roll call may be requested by any counselor, shall be in the records, alphabetical, rotated after each year. That was
After each
it.
vote.
Huh?
Rotate after each
Vote not every year.
Oh, rotate after vote, yeah, I'm sorry. Pass, yes, no, abstention, pass. Rejected measures, Rule 9. So this is kind of interesting, like, if we vote on something and we vote it down, we cannot address it again for 6 months. So sometimes you'll see us ask to have something removed without prejudice, which is basically saying we're not going to vote on it now, but maybe it will come back. I mean, because once you vote on something, if it's a no, then you really can't, you're not supposed to address it again for 6 months. So if there's a situation where it may be coming back, then someone would just remove it instead of voting on it. Rule 11, council committees, we talk about the different committees, we're going to expand the definitions. Ad hoc committees, example would be the pond naming, 11A, committee parameters and guidelines. So there's mail community, again, a lot of this is somewhat redundant and going over again. It talks a little bit about the rules in 11E, rules of government relations. Again, I know I'm going through these quickly, but so much of this is self-explanatory, and we're going on an hour and a half, so I don't want to keep you guys here forever. So,
So there's the committees that we went through.
yeah, I don't see.
Is there,
any-
how come there's only 2 listed?
Because,
Public Safety and Rules and Government Committee.
you know what, we should make a motion, you should make a motion that the Rules and Reg Committee reach out to the subcommittees to do some sort of definition, scope of work, mission statement for what they're doing.
Okay, so, you do it? Now,
I would-
no, you could do, so you could even say, so move, yeah, so if someone says,
Says all the
sometimes you could
things.
say how that say, you could so moved.
So
So
moved.
basically, you're kind of grabbing what that person's saying and making it a motion.
Okay, so moved.
There you go, and then there's a
It's
second.
cheating,
Are you saying something?
No.
else?
No, but you
Oh.
said it so eloquently. I couldn't have said it better.
So then I'll second it. Now there's discussion?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say the reason why that probably wasn't put in there was because the original charter, the rule, I've been here since the beginning, unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever.
What do you mean, since
Whichever,
the beginning?
whichever, since the beginning. I'm going on 21. Anyways, when we initially did the rules, in fact, I probably have them at home, the original rules, it was maybe 5 pages. And at that time, in the charter, it listed the subcommittees of the city council. Since that time, going forward 20 years, we've added
Did I second that? Did you
Various
second
subcommittees.
that?
new subcommittees. We have added new subcommittees to this working document because
So-
they were needed.
Thanks for dinner.
So that,
No, go
Sit
ahead.
down.
but that does require, I mean, that would speak to the fact that this could be updated. Since this is our made document, the
This is
fact
our
that they're not
document.
there,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be there, they should be there. The why is
Pass it along.
history.
Not me, no sugar.
So, anyway, I guess, please, if you read, you know, it's, especially
Are we
city
gonna
council
vote on
rules.
that?
Oh, right. Yeah, so any more discussion on that? So Jen, you're gonna make written copies to give to Barb for these 2 motions? Okay. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes. There you go. So again, but any of these, especially the rules, read through. If you have any questions, feel free to ask any of us.
Where are you?
I just finished. I'm at the glossary of terms, so I figured,
Yep.
do you want
Okay.
to, someone else want to do glossary of terms? Since you guys-
Sure.
Will you do glossary?
I can do glossary of terms because I need to put some caveats in some of these. For this, the reason I want to be a little cautious with this is some of these are just my own personal interpretations. Some of them I actually looked up. So for example, affordable housing, I went right to the, the housing authority and seeing what we have actually in writing already on the webpage, and making sure that our definitions are similar. So affordable housing, we hear a lot about affordable housing on the city council. It's something that is a contentious issue for a lot of residents about whether or not we need to have affordable housing and how much affordable housing. There are actual rules and everything, but if I just wanted you to know, what do we actually mean by affordable housing? Well, families with income less than 80% of the median income. For the Springfield, Chicopee, Holyoke standard metropolitan statistical area, which is just how they look at the number of people, and it doesn't matter. But if you ever want to talk about that from a demographic standpoint, I can show it to you better. But for the affordable housing issues, this has come up a lot on the last term because we had Parsons Village and we also had cottage, what would that be called, Cottage Street Apartments?
That's exactly what it's called.
And those are both affordable housing, so there was considerable feedback from particularly the new city residents about how they felt about having affordable housing coming into the neighborhood. So these are the types of things that when suddenly you hear affordable housing going back and forth, as a city council, you want to make sure that if someone comes to you on the fly and just says, so what is affordable housing, you have a ready definition.
Okay.
So the definition would apply both to the purchase of real estate and to the rental or leasing of real estate. So it has applications for both. Essentially, what we're doing is counting affordable housing, to expand on the definition, sorry. We're counting the number of units. There's a state law that says that communities have to have 10% of affordable housing, or the zoning that the community has in place cannot be used to stop an affordable project from coming into the community and only applying to the rules of bulk, size, height, and not various neighborhood definitions of what a single family or two family, you can't put a fourth, no, you can dump a whole bunch of units in that location unless you have 10% affordable housing. And so you have to go by the definition of what affordable housing is
Okay.
in order to be able to qualify or not qualify. I think right now we're between 6 and 7%. Northampton is at 12 and 13%. And they don't think they have enough affordable housing.
And wasn't that
Just, sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, that's great.
no, but I thought that was a good example of Treehouse.
Yeah.
From what I
Treehouse
understand, we
brought
were
up the
under that
affordable housing, yeah.
10%. So the state came in and said, this is where we're going to put it.
The
developer
developer
said
came in
that's
and
where
said, this is
they're
where
gonna
we're gonna
put
put
it.
it, and they were backed up by the Department of
Right.
Housing and
Right.
And
Community
we
Development.
we couldn't,
An arm of the state.
Right.
and it didn't even
Chapter.
matter what we had for zonings. And they can assert all of our zoning, they can assert all of it.
That's state law,
Come
it's
in
called
and-
chapter
Most
40B.
of the zoning,
So
there are
that's-
some parts of it.
AKA the anti-snub law.
Yeah, so
I
if you
think
hear
that's what
chapter,
it's
if you hear
called.
chapter 40B, that's referring to is that law that allows the developer who's putting in a percentage of affordable housing
The
to
anti-snub
skirt a lot
law.
of zoning laws, which.
So if we have it zoned commercial, as an example, they could come in and say,
Yep.
oh no, we're gonna make it residential.
Yep,
Yep.
Yeah, I think so.
Yes.
yep, as long as we're below
But I
the
mean, that-
10%,
it's
yes.
what's more concerning is when they say, see that nice field? We want that. That's
Oh.
where it becomes more concerning than a commercial spot, you know, it's,
And we wanna put 60 units there.
right, yeah. Right.
Yep,
But wait a minute, that really doesn't fit our master plan. We don't, you know,
I just
we
made a
thought
note for
maybe 20
myself
units was appropriate.
to maybe invite the city planner to one of our meetings and to explain what projects are currently happening in East Hampton and what projects we have on the radar for East Hampton that are coming up, and what the planning department's goals are for the next 2 years, because complying with this 40B is definitely a top priority. And one of the things that I try to do is take a look at their agenda. Their, you can kind of get an idea of what the planning board is doing, but that's really where a lot of these things start, and knowing what the planning board is doing early in the game, because sometimes by the time it gets to city council, you know, you can't say, my neighborhood thinks this is a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's like, well, they should have been at the planning board
Yeah.
meeting. So, it's really imperative to go to the smaller meetings if you want input.
Needless to say, affordable housing is an important issue
Of
on the
course.
velocity of times.
It's a good one to start with.
Yeah.
And I know that this is certainly not an exhaustive list. These were just some of the ones that we were thinking of.
Thank you for putting them on.
Well, there were a
Putting
lot
them
of
together.
things, when Smith and I started talking about this, where it was like, you just heard this term and everybody just started talking about it. It was like,
Mhm.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I have
Mhm.
no idea who that person is at the podium.
Mhm.
Like, you know, sometimes people just come and speak in front of city council and I would have to lean over and be like, who is that?
don't we ask them to introduce
Not every
themselves?
time.
Yeah, I mean, the public would be better
It's weird,
at,
you
but-
don't notice when you know who it is.
Yeah.
But if you don't know who it is, like, a lot of times, city department heads, not
Yeah.
introduced.
I say, the time I noticed your head spinning around was when the woman who was filling in for our assessor, who was a temporary fill, and she came up to say why it was important we act on picking that assessor sooner than later, because we had tax
Right,
rates
right.
reformed, and I remember you were like, who's this person? And so,
Yeah.
because it was a letter, I think a letter came with it too, when
Yeah.
she went up and spoke to the letter, but, yeah. Yes.
Just wanted to give you a definition and a title of all the city parks. I have a lot of parents come to me to talk about the different parks. They want to know, for example, when the Nonotuck Park was going to be open. It was closed for a very long time, and there were people still trying to play on the structures, although it was closed. So you'll get a lot of calls like that, and it's just nice to know the park. So that's definitely also worth a drive-by at least, just so you can see the different ones.
Okay.
Yeah, and if you have any other questions about the park, you just call the Park and Rec Department, because they're fully in charge of all of the parks.
Okay.
And they're also fully in charge of the cemeteries and the maintenance of and the burials and all of that.
So, the Conservation Commission, that is the body that oversees the Wetlands Protection Act. In East Hampton, that usually comes up with Northampton Road, the road that leads from East Hampton to Northampton. There is a lot of wetland protection on there, and very often a big controversy of having anything being built on that land is the wetlands protection. So that's the commission. So we have a cultural district designation for Cottage Street. And this is relatively recent, but the state has a special tourism program and grants availability. So they open it up. It's a competitive process. You have to apply to be considered a cultural district, and we applied for Cottage Street to be one. And now that we have that, and it goes from Nini's to the boardwalk, now that we have that designation with the state, that opens up East Hampton for a number of grants that we were not eligible for prior to the cultural district designation. And with that cultural district designation is when we started to see a lot more branding of particularly of Cottage Street, of being a destination. That's when we started to see cultural chaos come in, and all of that is part of that cultural district.
Okay.
A lot of public art that's been funded by that.
Cottage Street Studios. The reason I wanted to make sure we have this is that this looks like a little brick house from the outside as you go by the Button Building and then around the curve. But inside, if you haven't been there, there are, I think they said at
It's a
least
labyrinth.
60. Yeah, there's so many different artists.
Joe's office is there.
Yeah, Joe.
Go Bill, so.
So it's really one of the gems of the city that if you ever hear people say that East Hampton is an artist's colony, I think that really is part of that definition of an
Did you
artist's
put
colony.
Paragon in there?
Not yet, I don't think I did.
It's like
Paragon's
Sweeney
part of that,
Todd
too.
in my
Yeah,
head.
exactly.
Good Lord.
Does anyone need a review of CPA funds? I don't know how familiar or unfamiliar you are with those.
All right,
You understand, I mean, the main thing is we've had several counselors who, when there's an appropriation, why can't we use that money? So there's those four things.
I just wanted to, because it hasn't come up yet, normally it has already come up by this time, is a snow emergency. You will eventually. It could be in 2 weeks, it could be in 3 weeks, it could be one good major storm that'll just wipe us right out. In the budget, we set aside money for snow removal. If we increase that line item in the budget, we will have to increase it for the life of that budget. We can never decrease that line
So
item.
next year, it's gotta
We
be
can-
whatever that is.
Right, we can never decrease that line item. So for years and years and years, that line item really has never been increased.
It's always been increased, but a very
Very
minimal amount.
minimal amount. Because,
$500.
because
$1,000.
once you increase it, that's where it stays.
If
Why?
If it goes from
I'm curious.
100,000.
Because if you put the money in there and you have a really mild winter, you can't access that money until free cash is certified till the end of the year, which could potentially put us into a really good bind. So they keep that line item usually minimally fed. That's when we go into.
Because you can't use the money elsewhere
You cannot-
if you
you cannot
don't use
use
it
it.
on streets.
Whereas you can
Okay.
always
snow
deficit
removal.
spend for
Right.
snow removal,
So-
and snow
Backfill it.
emergencies.
So you will see
and
that
take
we
it
will,
from
yeah.
the
Gotcha.
future.
Yeah, so you will
Gotcha.
see that eventually, we will get to the point where it will come to the city council, and that does not go down to finance or anything, it's voted right then and there. Once they declare the snow emergency and it comes to us, then we start to deficit spend off of next year's free cash,
Okay.
so.
Now, JP, and as I remember from finance, they will have to sign those receipts, right?
Yeah, you always sign
Two
the
out of three
receipts. Yeah.
members of the finance committee have always been there to
We'll
sign
get the
the
bills
receipts.
and you have to sign the receipts of
I
the bills.
certainly, and feel free to ask any questions about signing the receipts.
Yeah.
I think it's an important thing
Yeah.
to do, to look for the further details regarding
Absolutely.
the signing of the receipts. Don't just necessarily look at what's presented to you, look at the supporting.
When you say receipts, does that mean
Your bill,
vendors
your
we may
receipt.
Yeah.
use?
The bills.
Sure, you.
Beyond just what we have in terms of street plowing?
Anything that has to do with snow plowing, once we get into deficit
And these are
spending,
usually
you're
private
gonna
vendors.
start
These are usually
signing on.
private vendors, right?
And also public employees.
Mhm, public employees, overtime.
The overtime for the public employees.
Any equipment
and-
bought having to do with snow
and-
removal.
And any money spent for food for the employees.
Right, if they're working
If
14,
they're work-
15-hour
If
shift.
you work over, they
Mhm.
get there's a $6 for this
Yeah.
and $3 for this. and-
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it probably wouldn't hurt at some point to put all that data up on the website at some point. I mean, we're being open about what's being spent, what it takes to plow the city. That's part of what it takes.
It's expensive.
And it's very expensive.
What was that
Fuel.
mentioned? What on the website? Because I'm keeping a list of what
What I'm
we should put
saying,
on
it
the
probably wouldn't
website.
hurt to put some of
How
those
much it costs
finance
to-
bills that you sign for the snow emergencies.
Well, they're gonna put it all in one Excel sheet anyways, so I mean.
It's
you
on an
could-
Excel sheet, well,
So that would, not necessarily the bills themselves,
Well-
but, you know, the appropriation, you know, to the line item. Say you know, you get a bill for an piece of equipment that goes to a truck or something, and that's gonna come from like either GNS or somewhere, whoever the vendor is. I mean, that all goes into an Excel sheet that, you know, X amount of money was paid to, you know, X vendor for
right.
piece of
While
equipment.
If it broke
During
down.
the school emergency.
Well, the state legislation is looking at the public records law, and everybody's getting tested on that. There's a program that's used called Open Checkbook, which does exactly what you're saying and exactly what you're saying.
Mm.
And I think that's something that our city should take a look at, to be able to have an
I
open
think it's an
checkbook.
eminently good idea, because
Yeah.
it makes it very public and open.
And that's fine, you know, but are we there yet? So, you know, it's okay for good ideas, but are we there yet? Yeah.
Well, let's not debate that right now
Let's not.
since we're on
Yeah.
this. East Hampton City Arts Plus is, okay, the
Skip debt
mass.
exclusion, did you want to?
Hmm?
You skipped
Oh,
debt exclusion.
I didn't mean to. So the debt exclusion, I'm not really a finance person.
I get really briefly. So there are two things you may hear about finance. One is an override, which people talk about, you know, which is a permanent increase in our tax rate. So you bump it up and then you keep on adding 2.5% onto it. A debt override tends to be for a specific project, like a new school. Or
A debt exclusion.
Debt exclusion.
Debt exclusion, I'm sorry.
Not override.
Debt override.
Exclusion.
No, don't say that
No.
over.
Yeah.
Debt exclusion.
Override, an override is a permanent,
Yes.
Yeah.
I just merged them.
an exclusion is for a
You were doing so
specific
well.
project.
And for a specific period of time,
And
too.
a specific
The
period of time for a specific
The
amount of money.
override is a permanent change to the tax rate.
So some examples of debt exclusions that East Hampton has had have been for the new high school.
Mhm.
Yep.
Public safety company.
Yeah, the public,
Yep.
that was before, it was the public safety complex. And then if we end up having a new elementary school, and we need to finance that, that would also be a debt
And once it's
exclusion.
paid for, it goes away.
Yes.
Right.
And you have a specific time,
Yeah.
like maybe 5 years or
20,
whatever?
20,
Just like a
20
mortgage.
years
Yeah,
usually.
like a mortgage.
Just like a mortgage.
20 years.
But that's an
usually.
important part of the schools right now, is that we're not very far into a 20-year
Yeah.
debt exclusion, and
For
now we're
high school.
talking about another school, and for several, taxpayers, they're like, that's too many.
It's gonna be
now.
very
All at once,
difficult.
yeah.
It's
So
gonna be
then you
very
have to look at
difficult.
what's coming off the debt exclusion. from
Has
previous history.
retiring,
What's
yeah.
happened with the sewer and at the sewage plant.
But the
what
sewer and
happened-
wattage plant, usually
That's a separate.
that's
Let me use an
separate.
example, the public
Yeah, don't
safety
use that.
complex will be coming off
Yeah.
shortly. And so that's something to be aware of as you consider what's best for the city.
Gotcha. That's good.
Yeah, now,
That's a good explanation.
but that opens up the door now for the sewer and water.
You open up, yeah.
So you might as well just explain
Okay,
that,
so-
the sewer and water enterprise
There's
funds.
an enterprise fund, sewer and water departments, where the fund is set up separate from the city funds. They raise their own revenue, so you have your own water rate, your own sewage rate.
And that's the Board of Public
And that's
Works,
the
which is
board-
autonomous from
Board of
us.
Public Works, and it is autonomous, and those funds are separate from the city government funds. We still have to approve supplemental appropriations from those funds, et cetera, and any borrowing against
Yeah.
those funds.
Mhm.
But it's separate from actual city-raised funds, like from property tax, from excise tax on vehicles,
So
et
that's
cetera.
that separate bill we get as.
Yes, that's your water and
as
That's your
sewer
water
bills.
and sewer bill separate.
goes
That
to-
goes to them.
Yes.
So those monies would be used for the infrastructure for the water and sewer.
Right.
One
And
other
to
thing
speak
while
to
we're
that-
on the
Separate
subject,
from our tax
Just
Yes.
briefly, we have I'm sorry.
And to
Sophie,
speak to
again,
that-
we have, let me, I
Of course.
interrupted you before, don't think. We have before us $1 million study of our infrastructure that we
Mhm.
approved. So that's being evaluated by Ty and Bond and other engineering groups, which we should keep an eye on because infrastructure is a big issue. Hopefully it'll help us to be able to determine what our needs will be over the next several
In
years.
terms of the pipes and the flowage.
Pipes, the flowage.
Age of the pipes.
Yeah.
Age, the deterioration, age
Right.
isn't necessarily
Deterioration.
Right.
the fact. It could be that this pipe from this era deteriorated faster than the pipe
Mhm.
from this era.
Yeah.
And so they're studying all of
Yeah.
that, and hopefully we'll have a good handle, and that'll make us eligible for state and federal funding,
Yep.
and we all need to coordinate that, so it's,
Yeah,
sorry,
they
we're really
actually
diverging from our
spoke.
glossary, aren't we?
They actually spoke at a planning meeting that I think Dan and I were at, where they talked about some of this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, and also that's quite all right, I didn't want to forget. Legislatively, because that's my I like state legislation, the wastewater treatment plants, they're bumping up their criteria, and a lot of communities are
They
going to be
always
in a
do.
lot of trouble, because we're going to have to rebuild wastewater.
And ours
treatment
is in
plant.
pretty good shape because we have,
But these regulations are
been
going to
moving
knock us
forward.
out
The
of compliance.
Stormwater regulations. Yeah.
we have been moving forward with a lot of that preemptively, so I think we're gonna be in okay shape, I mean, when it comes down to that, so.
I don't think so. Not from what I've seen. I mean, I hope so. I really do. But I know Northampton's a world of it.
Yeah,
So,
we're
but I
not
don't-
Northampton though when
Yeah,
it
the
comes to that.
stormwater management standards are gonna knock us out of compliance.
And now back to you.
I'm not as confident.
So ECA Plus is funded through the Massachusetts Cultural Council, and that's where we get Burns Maxey. That's where her salary comes from.
Okay.
And the East Hampton City Arts Plus, the reason they changed it to Plus is that they went from really considering visual arts as arts and trying to expand it to literary arts, to sound arts, to
Okay.
much more encompassing. And the grants committee are just simply the committee of people who do the funding.
I would also add that also incorporates Southampton and West Hampton.
Mhm.
We roll them in, so that's a little bit why it's plus as well.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So does she work on behalf of them as well?
I think there's people in West Hampton and Southampton who kind of help out in the East Hampton group. But
Mhm.
yeah, we do kind of encompass, that's why it's East Hampton, ECA plus as well.
Okay.
And then the East Hampton Council on Aging is in the
Old post
yeah,
office.
old post office. A lot of people think that's the only thing that they do. But Council on Aging is really part of a multi-layered network that goes down to the city level, but there's also federal and state levels when it comes to councils on aging. And in Massachusetts, a person who lives in anywhere within the state, if you had a concern about an elderly person, if you go to the Massachusetts website for elder care, it will give you a 1-800 number. So they will start to put people into contact with the East Hampton Council on Aging as a point person from that initial contact call. That, oh, it sounds like you might want to talk to the East Hampton Council on Aging. They also do a lot of outreach with seniors in the community. When I first moved to East Hampton in 2007, we had the highest proportion of people over the age of 95 anywhere in the country. So I think most of them have died by now, so I doubt we still have that distinction. But a big part of that is keeping them in the community, and the Council on Aging really has a number of programs that are supposed to aid the older person in doing that.
They also
I
have
just go to you.
They also have a very, very large volunteer system with them that do programs within the Council on Aging, but not necessarily part of the Council on Aging. Like your friends, I think it's the Friends of
Yeah,
the Friends of the Council, which is huge because they raise a lot of money, they do a lot of awareness. They've raised a lot of money for the vans. They're very active, very
Right.
Yep. So, good group down there. Go introduce yourself to Linda Talbot. Go say hi to her.
Oh, we had a very lengthy meeting
Okay.
about a month and a half ago.
There's the executive session, we've already discussed that. First readings, it didn't have the definition when this went to print, but I'll fix that. The fish ladder is not as commonly talked about now, but when I first came into East
Still
Hampton,
mentioned
and
once in a
up
while.
through years, I would always hear about the fish ladder. So this is taken directly from the newspaper, but just as a really, it was a pretty big project that had a lot of problems with the funding and a lot of unanticipated delays. One of the remaining controversies over the fish ladder that I see today, just based on the press, is that the general public is not able to actually watch the fish ladder in action. And when it was being proposed and when it was being built, that was a really big draw for a lot of people, that they would be able to actually see the fish ladder in action.
Where is it?
It's right on Northampton Street.
At the Manhan.
We have a right-of-way in there
Yeah.
that's supposed to be open to public. And when we did the easement, we put in public parking
Right.
spots back
Stated
there
too, yeah.
that the city still owns.
But you can't
We
see
had-
it.
we had
You
at
can't
least
see
4
anything going
parking
on.
So there's
Yeah.
it's called
Room for
the
picnic
Vets
tables.
Memorial Bridge on Northampton Street, where
both
they put in
access
that
to the
new
back river
traffic
and
light,
access
and on the right-hand
overlooking
side, it used
the
to be a
fish
beer
ladder.
shop. So
Yeah.
if you look down, there's
Only
an
the
older brick
question that may
building,
have-
and that was a very old well for East Hampton, and that was a publicly owned building. It has since gone through a couple of different owners, but it is that dam that has the fish ladder in it.
Wow.
It was originally, there was a power station, it was a water wheel there originally.
Oh.
Many,
Curiously,
many.
there's a ton of funding in Massachusetts to take dams down now.
Well, that was
This dam
mentioned,
is still in
but
pretty
this,
good shape
yeah.
right now,
You
and
dabble in
I'm
it has a
super
fish ladder,
lucky.
which cost $1 million
I mean, are you
to
like,
build.
every
About-
day I have
about ordinances?
alerts, I read what happens on the hill.
And while we're talking about it, East Hampton has
I work
a
with
study
statewide politics.
that was done around 1986, where there was gonna be hydropower
Mhm.
at that.
We did discuss
at
that.
dam.
Yes, we
Just to
did.
bring that to
Yeah, we
everyone's
did.
attention. That can certainly come up
Yeah,
again.
yep.
As we move.
We did
to
discuss that,
a
yeah.
variety of other issues regarding power in our
Yep.
community.
And this
Yeah,
would be
that was
actually an
discussed, I
example of the
remember that.
property committee, because I believe on that property committee, as part of the purchase, we retain the right
Yes, we
to
did.
use it again for electricity. At the time, the technology as it is now, it is not efficient, it isn't cost effective, but if it becomes cost effective, then we retain the right to reuse it as.
Yes, we did, yeah.
I get a lot of calls and
I know, you asked me
a lot
about
of
that. I was like,
residents asking
kidding
me
me.
about, they ask me about the green
Hydropower.
community designation, they ask why can't we use our dams more efficiently? And-
Well, we only have one dam, and it's like,
But from the, this,
not like
these are the
oil.
questions that I field, and you can say that,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
that's out of the realm of my
I'm certainly
experience,
happy
so.
to talk with anybody
Yeah,
that's
JP's got the
interested in hydropower.
ups
And this dam
downs
down
and
here
all
is not ours, that is owned by that building, Cottage Street.
Right,
That's a private.
Mhm.
right. And we don't own Perfume Pond, oh, I'm sorry, Lower Mill Pond.
One Ferry Street actually owns the other side of it, because I looked into trying to get that footbridge back. But the city owns one side of the
Yeah,
pond and one
and
ferry
we don't
owns
ever
the
wanna
other
own
side.
that pond.
So the,
Do we, Dan?
we have a,
Perfume
we
pond?
also have a green
We
community
don't ever wanna own that.
designation. And we started, we were first awarded this in 2010. And I'm still not comfortable with the level of information I've received regarding what this means for us. I know from the planning department, it opens the planning department up to a lot of different grants than otherwise would be available. But in terms of the decisions that we make as a council, one of the, I know everyone can have their personal opinions about a lot of different, for example, whether or not the environment is important to you. When this came to me, one of the concerns I had was with all of these big vehicles that we're buying through the police, you know, the line saying we need all of these really new vehicles and we're going to be replacing all of our cars with the larger vehicles, whether or not that would,
Disqualifies?
yeah, and I just wanted to know the answer to that. It was very.
So basically, the question is seeing whether or not we're still compliant with being a green community designation.
Right,
I
and I
have
don't know the
SUVs.
answer to that, if currently, whether or not we
What-
still have the green
What
community
did we
designation.
need to get that designation? Like, what is green
I wasn't
about
on the
community?
board. Can you speak to that?
I'm sorry, what was the question?
What did we have to do to get our designation as a green community?
I think I already did, do we?
I know we had to change at least some of our building code, a
Yeah.
different change of insulation.
Couple ordinances, insulation.
What are the 5 criteria?
I don't know, that's why I gave the,
That would be in, that would be
Okay.
the health department?
Planning, probably
Building-
Planning
Jessica.
and-
Building
building?
department would know the
Jessica
green
does, yeah.
building codes and the
Yeah.
stretch codes that had to go into effect.
Yeah, for the building, but I mean, the green community standard, I don't,
Yeah, the planning department is the ones
Probably
that you
planning.
wanna
We
talk to
did
the planning.
LEDs in our street lamps.
yeah, we
Yeah.
did.
yeah, we put micro.
And we do own the
worms
street
in
lamps,
our,
by the way.
We got worms.
I got it, the one thing I noticed, this is a very
Treatment.
dark
We
town.
never,
Like, the lights are not, it's not very well lit.
We own them.
Well, it doesn't matter, it's not well
No, we
lit.
went to LEDs. LEDs only light down. They don't light like streetlights
Yeah.
used to. They light down, so.
All right, so here's the 5 criteria. Provide as-of-right sitting in designated locations for renewable alternative energy generation, research and development or manufacturing facilities.
We did that with our solar.
Adopt an expedited application and permit process for as-of-right energy facilities. Establish an energy use baseline and develop a plan to reduce energy use by 20% within 5 years. Let's see if we did that.
Yeah.
Purchase only fuel-efficient vehicles. 5, set requirements to minimize life cycle energy costs for new construction. One way to meet these requirements is to
Fuel
adopt a
efficient
new
for
board
the
of
purpose.
building
Right.
regulations
I
and
believe,
standards.
that's where the rub is, because the purpose is to be able to move in the snow and get.
It might not be energy efficient in.
Right,
No.
and maybe
It
it
may
happens
be
at the
energy efficient,
subcommittee
but
level,
energy
but
efficient
we
for the
never
purpose.
get
Sure.
an estimate of a fuel-efficient vehicle versus an estimate to a non-flex fuel vehicle. We never, ever,
Well,
ever
you're
see
only
it.
gonna use certain vehicles for certain purposes.
Right, but we should at least.
You're not gonna get a fuel-efficient fire truck or
Well, there might be.
something like that.
Yeah.
Maybe the new
No, there's
technology.
definitely like flex fuel pickup trucks and stuff like that, and we never see an estimate for those.
Never mind, I'm not gonna.
We could certainly push for that.
Yeah, or you can.
My assumption is
We
that's
already
happening
have
at
a,
the
or
subcommittee.
don't we already have an ordinance
We
about?
have an ordinance.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
rarely,
No,
because.
we ask every time. I
Yeah.
mean, we've been asking for 2 years. I've never seen one.
Seen what?
The comparison.
A comparison between
Well-
we're choosing the non-flex fuel vehicle.
We're
because
also
of this.
choosing vehicles that are on the state bid list, which have already been out and bidded, and if you wanna go out and bid for those vehicles, you're probably gonna increase the price, from my own experience, with buses. I buy buses.
Yeah, I just wanna see
for the
them
city.
right. I just wanna see like,
I
okay,
mean-
so we've increased the price, so
You
you're
know.
right. That is a 20%, and we can't do that right now.
You
So
know,
I just
mean,
wanna see it.
I can go out to bid for propane or
And we can do
something,
that.
or electric or something like
But
that, and
I
increase the
agree.
price
I
by
mean,
50 to 60%.
I agree. I mean, I think if it's not something that we want, you always have to see it. I mean, you should always have that right to
Yeah.
see the difference, even if it's out of the ballpark.
Right.
Yeah.
You really should force them to do that due diligence.
I mean,
You don't have
I-
to first, and you can ask for it
Usually
in
it comes up in
finance when it comes
finance.
up to
Exactly.
you.
But anyway.
I don't know if I've seen the documentation, but I mean, typically Bruce will say, you know, we compared them and, you know, this vehicle, whether, I mean, in my mind, they tend to have good rationale for why they chose the vehicle they did.
Right.
But again, I don't know if I've seen, this is the same vehicle price-wise, you know, as a comparison.
Yeah.
And I think, as I can't remember who I was talking to, and I don't know if it's DPW or public safety, one of those areas is excluded from that in the green communities because they realize it would be hard to do. I don't know
And
which
that
one
would
it
be
is,
the
but-
diesels.
Yeah. Well, I made a note to make sure that, you know, green community designation, are we still compliant?
Yep.
So that's what I put in the minutes. Is that good with everybody?
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Charter school. What's it?
Oh, the Hilltown. Dan, I want to make sure I'm not misquoting the price, but every time we have a student go to the Hilltown charter, we have to pay them $10,000.
Any charter school.
Mhm.
That's so important, it keeps our students in our schools.
It's the same
Yeah.
amount, is it
I know.
5,000 for school choice?
But
10 for charter and 5 for school choice, correct?
And it used to be that the Hilltown Charter School was not in East Hampton.
Correct.
Just moved into East Hampton.
Mhm.
So all of a sudden, part of their community compact plan is that they're going to open up X number of spaces for the city residents. So all of a sudden,
We losing-
just because they bought something in East Hampton, our school district had to pay $200,000 to the charter school because of the number of students that wanted to go there.
Well, we
So-
don't literally pay it, but it's taken off the cherry sheets, it's taken off of our assessments.
Yeah,
You
and
don't
it's,
have it to spend.
No.
so it,
Right.
I'm not bringing
It
this up
affects
to
the East
debate
Hampton
whether or not we should have the charter school here, but
It's
you
a
do
fact.
need to know
Yeah.
that part of the argument when people are getting very riled up about charter schools, this is why.
Yeah.
That is also gonna be a giant legislative issue because Governor Baker has asked to take the cap off, so.
Which, Dan, I have a question for you, maybe no, because if this cap is on right now, how did the Hilltown charter come in? Do you know that?
They get
Because they
permission.
were here already.
They just
They were here already? Oh, okay.
The cap relates to the number of charter schools in the state,
Right.
not
Oh,
the
that
They
way.
were in
location of an
Haydenville.
existing
Oh,
charter
okay.
school
They were
that's already part of the
existing
number.
in Haydenville, and they got a lease
Okay.
here
That's
in
why
East
Baker's the
Hampton.
lead on it, because it's statewide.
Oh, I
It's
didn't
not
realize
just-
they could still do this.
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
still doing that,
Okay.
yeah.
I think they will still, even though they want, are they opening new seats? Or are they opening existing
They're
seats
opening
that they
new
don't have filled? I don't know if they can increase their charter without state legislation.
You talking about the cap?
Yeah.
Cap's on the number of schools.
It's on the number of
The cap's
schools,
on the
doesn't
number of
matter how
schools,
many
not
students
students.
that they
Yeah.
oh.
So you could just.
So if they have the space, they can do it.
Which is why they moved into a bigger space.
I'm gonna skip over
Yeah,
interdepartmental
don't leave this, right.
plans
I think we
first.
really need to look,
Do you want to go on it?
look much more closely at the charter and
Oh.
choice for funding formulas.
Yeah, that's,
I thought you
that's a
meant-
much
And I
bigger
think-
discussion.
and all I'm
I know,
saying
it's like,
is,
man, I'm kind of intrigued, but I'm also ignorantly, blissfully ignorant.
this
No, it's
has the
huge.
potential, with what Governor Baker's
Sure.
proposal can affect,
It's huge.
will affect everything for every
Absolutely.
public school across the entire state.
So that means that we could have 10
Amen.
schools built here.
Yeah.
Sure.
But they won't, Okay, so,
Because they've been talking about school choice, but that's a whole.
Yeah, however.
the master plan, if you haven't read it yet, it was a document that was created in 2006.
I was on the master plan committee.
So it, I found it really helpful to see some of the names of the people who were on that, just to become familiar with people who have been involved in the city for a long time. So it was helpful from that perspective, and helped me place some people when they would come up during public speak time, like, why do you have an, you know, that was, it's
Why
just
do you
good
get
to
an
know.
opinion?
Mhm.
Yeah,
And-
there's some disproportionate influence.
And again, the master plan is 9 years old at this point, so a lot of people will say that this is outdated, we should no longer use it, and other people are saying this is the only document that we have that is based on the community's input,
Mhm.
so that.
There's a lot of meetings.
Mhm. The Oliver Street Landfill and Solar project was, the city doesn't own the actual solar project, but the city rents out the landfill to a solar company that we then get the reimbursement from. So the actual place where the solar project is located is in the Oliver Street landfill. I've never been able to find it.
I'll take you out
Right
there.
by my house.
Would you
So
like me to
many
take you down
times.
there?
You can come right by my house.
Somebody.
It's right by my
Right
house.
down there.
I
goes
would
by it
end
every
up
time
at
she
the
comes down
apple
to the
orchard.
meetings.
It's cool. It's
You're
very
gonna go
cool.
past the apple, no, you're in the wrong place if you're going to the apple orchard.
I
A
know.
small shout out to the assessors department, because the way that they structured this deal, because solar panels have a degradation to them, is that they have it tied in to the degradation of the solar
Yep.
panels and of the
Nice.
equipment.
Yep.
Every other community is structuring their deal the way that they did.
It
This
can be
is- this is-
refreshed, in other words, we can get the equipment.
Mhm.
refreshed.
Yeah, it's really, really well done, and also, I think we got a lot of the equipment free because we were used as a example for the
Yeah.
company that was doing these kind of things. There's nothing but win all over this.
We were
solar
the
project.
model.
So do we get exclusive use of the electricity out of this, or can this company sell it to others, and that's why?
They do sell it.
They do
Yep.
sell it.
We get a
a
proportion of it.
Okay.
It's about
portion of it.
$80,000 a year.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
That we
Wow.
used to offset our electric bills.
Well,
yeah.
and that's what I mean, is the way the deal is structured, the way that we sell it to them, and the way that.
We could
the-
buy all of the solar equipment, that is also in the agreement, but, no.
Probably outdated.
No,
Oh, yeah,
it's-
well, it
that-
does, it's
I-
outdated right now. They're so
That
making so
solar
many
array is
advances.
something that East Hampton should really be super, super proud of. I mean, that was, and that was Mayor Mike Kosnick.
That was a win.
That's a great, great thing.
We did try to
And he
put-
will talk to you for hours about that.
Yeah,
if you
we
want.
did try to put the second solar unit on the other landfill, but we got too much pushback from the neighbors up on Loudville
Yes.
Road, and, but that was still never really taken out of the mix. We could potentially,
Well, I think it's
Go-
wide
go
open
do
to
it. It's
be
wide
able to
open.
put
Yep.
any solar array anywhere in the city.
Yep.
That option is still open to us, so it's not just any particular site, but it's anywhere.
Yeah.
That may make sense. I think as part of our energy package, we need to keep
We,
Keep
yeah,
very much aware of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so since I've never been able to locate it, I.
I'll take you out there for a ride.
I'm not sure it
Let
really
me know, I'll
exists.
take you right out there.
I was like, there
Let's
it
go on.
is.
Done.
You gotta get out, you gotta get
Walk
out
the
of
dogs
the
by
plains.
very frequently.
Petition to council, I know we've already gone over that.
I remember bringing junk to that.
Yeah. It's either 100 voters or a city councilor putting something forward. Proposition 2.5 override, I know we've already gone over that a bit. For the history of East Hampton, we did have an unsuccessful Proposition 2.5 override back, I think, in 2012, for schools. Public speak time we've gone over. Reserve fund,
It's our rainy day account, what you'll hear referred to as the rainy day account, that's the reserve funds.
Is
Well-
that where snow removal money would come from?
No.
No.
That will, the snow removal money is taken out of next year's budget.
Because we go into a deficit and we just pull it out.
We go into a deficit, and then what we usually do is pay that deficit off when free cash is released.
Gotcha.
And free cash comes from, towards the end of the year, all of the departments turn in
Whatever they
all of
haven't
their
spent.
budgets, and whatever money is left and not expended
free money.
from the, but it's not free.
It's
I
not
know.
Don't use that word. I know,
Didn't
I
you
know,
just
I
say
even
free
hate,
cash?
I even hate calling it free cash, because it's not really free. But it's leftover monies from all of the accounts put all together, and then it goes to the state, and the state then certifies it. They do all of our accounting, and they say, yes, you're certified for $500,000 in free cash. This is what, you could put back into wherever you want. And normally, the mayor and the city council and the finance committee, the mayor makes a recommendation to maybe put $250,000 in the reserve account, just to put it away and
Yeah, that's a really comprehensive definition that you found.
keep it put
And also
away.
new growth is in there too, so.
New growth,
If you
yeah.
have a new development go up, or actually, we had a nice free cash a couple of years ago because both Parsons Street and Cottage Street were hitting, so we got extra money from taxes that came in
Right.
that we got. But
That's a back tax.
it's nice, it's a nice check to get when we get it.
Okay.
Second reading, we've already gone over tonight. Smart growth, the reason I put smart growth in it is when I've gone to this, planning, the city planning department has a meeting where they talk about, hey, let's talk about what our priorities are for the upcoming year, and the word smart growth was repeatedly used. So smart growth is simply a model of community development that the planner will use, and by being able to show that you're using a smart growth plan, it opens up the city planning department to a number of grants and funding sources that they would not be able to access if they didn't have a smart growth plan.
Okay.
Essentially, the smart growth concept is that if we build out in the
Existing.
rural regions, we're developing land that may or may not have sewer
Right.
infrastructure, water infrastructure, so you have to build all this new infrastructure, spend all this money. Why don't we develop our areas where it already has
Mhm.
public transportation, has, you can walk, infrastructure, the bike paths, everything's available. So the balance to this is, the counterbalance is, if you put up a high-rise downtown, where do you park? Do you drive? Do you not drive? Do you are people gonna change their habits? There's all sorts of other balancing issues that we have to
Mhm.
consider when we adopt zoning regulations that deal with smart growth.
Mhm.
It's balance. That's our role.
Jen, for the street acceptance protocol,
Yeah, we went over that, you guys are good, right?
Yeah.
Miles, we gotta put more miles on the odometer for our town.
Mhm. Strong mayor form. Who wants to take on that one?
It is a strong mayoral
Yeah.
form of government.
We have it, or if Hampton has it, it's,
Yeah.
I don't know many cities and towns, many cities that don't have a strong mayor.
Worcester, part-time
Okay,
city
okay,
manager,
yeah,
it's
right.
really
Right,
weird.
they have and their mayor is like more kind of ceremonial, kind of like the Queen.
Ceremonial
And then there's a
mayor.
city
Yeah, Margaret
manager.
even
who
tells
does
you
that.
that.
Yeah,
Do they have
exactly.
selectmen, or?
They have a
They
city
have
council,
city council.
and they have a town manager, who's basically kind of the CEO
It's a
of
very
the
strange
situation.
charter.
Well, it is like a hybrid, isn't it? kind of
It's
a
a
bit
very
of
much, it's a weird hybrid.
But typically, it's a situation like we have here.
Yeah, we're
where
good
the
friends with the
mayor-
chief of staff over there, so we have that.
Where the mayor has a lot of responsibilities over hiring, firing, daily operations. I mean, even when we were talking about our appointments, they are appointments, but because, they work within the city, they essentially are managed by the mayor and stuff. Now, if there's a problem, it comes to us and we address it as a team or together, but yeah. So if you hear that term, it's essentially referring to those governments where the mayor has a large range of
Okay.
responsibilities.
And our mayor also sits on the school committee, so.
And I just want to go back down to the last paragraph of that, because this is one of the first things that Joe, you really talked to me about when I was first coming on
Mhm.
as a city councilor, that so many people will, for me, they'll come up and say, why aren't you demanding more money for the schools? But it's really more of a checks and balances
Mhm.
for that, because we don't have the power to demand that as a city council, that any department get more funding. We only have the power to not accept the budget as is and demand that it's lower funding for the budget.
What is the rationale for that?
We have a pie. And we have to fund each piece of the pie. We have to fund public safety. We have to fund education. We have to fund council on aging, parks and rec. And you'll see that. Have you got a copy of the budget?
Yeah.
You got a copy of the budget. Did you look at it all?
Mhm.
You went through it? Okay.
My question, though, is not that. My question is, why does do we not have any power to?
That's in our
increase
charter.
it? No, I understand that, but what I'm trying to understand
Looking for their
why.
You're like in a
conceptual
Monty
rationale.
Python skit.
Yes.
There's no, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but any of the finance meetings that I've been to where they're talking about the budget, I've seen absolutely no negotiation about any kind of funding, like, we're spending this much on paper, or, and how to actually affect change in the budget. I see no way to do it. It's come down as
We're at
just,
bare bones.
just.
Yeah, but I-
But I've
just-
seen
No,
that
not-
also as part of the strong mayor form of
Right.
government,
Right.
Yeah,
that
That was the
mayor
option,
doesn't
the
need
mayor
to-
right.
I
makes
could've-
all those decisions.
Mhm.
I could imagine how that could become chaos if you had 5 people in charge of, at some point, someone
No, the
needs to
Some
say,
mayor is in
cities
charge.
this is my responsibility.
there should
Well,
be a
cities and
way-
towns-
Figure out what-
Towns
what-
do that.
what-
Well,
the
and there
better-
should be a way for the finance department to audit where those numbers come from, where it's like, okay, so you say you're gonna increase this by 5,000. Where's the paper trail that needs to be increased? Or what is we spent so much on gasoline with the DPW last year, why is there an increase with this year?
Now, see, I
You're-
disagree. I'm sorry.
So
but-
you're presented information like, like the police chief will come in with his budget, and the fire chief will come in with his budget, but you don't have the ability to compare it to the prior year's budget.
Oh, you do.
Yes, you do.
Well, we do.
Oh, they-
You
they
have
should
last
bring
year's
that in.
budget with you.
We go back.
The budgets
They're
aren't
right there.
available online from the different departments.
But
They
they
give
are
it to them in a
available,
booklet to
they're
people to find
available
out.
in the,
Yeah.
in
So-
the proposed
So
budget.
that'll be
that-
something that the finance department will have to do and be like, okay, so you've had an increase of 20%, is that because gas prices went up? Is that because, gas prices were
And
lower?
we can ask that.
Yeah,
You can
and I actually
absolutely
I'm with
ask
Joy there, because Melissa's been very good, or Mayor saying, we lost an employee here, so we're dropping that line item, or, this happened, so this is gonna go up, or the reason why we did that. I mean, I
Yeah.
find them very,
No,
I don't see
Yeah,
the
and when
documentation.
they do the new budget, they always have the old budget
Yeah.
side by side, so that they have the FY.
I saw that, and
then they
I
have-
was comparing the last year to this year and trying to determine in my own head why things would go up or down
The
from
biggest,
where
the
it is,
biggest
and I-
increases are health insurance and
Yeah.
our insurances.
Yeah.
And there were
Liability
some
insurance,
numbers that
health
struck me as
insurance,
odd.
and-
Yeah,
and-
but really, I've never had it that, like, I think JP will agree, if you say, that's odd, why is that? They're right there to say, oh, well, that's
Okay,
because of
yeah,
this.
and that's good, okay.
And you'll see, it's funny, because the one column is the budget for 2 years ago, or a year ago. One was the actual budget of what they spent.
Right,
And
yeah.
then, so it's like,
And then the proposed
I
budget.
know, because whenever I want to change my budget, I have to give like a pint of blood
yeah. yeah.
anytime I want to do it. So I just wondered if there was the same accountability of,
Oh, of course there
you're
is.
going up and down, I want to know why you're going up and
Yeah.
down.
The charter defines the mayor's proposed budget, and it does have to reflect information from the previous year. And the mayor is supposed to put in her proposal, his proposal, an explanation of any deviances, deviations rather, from the previous.
Huge,
But
yeah.
any substantial deviations, any important deviations.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I think that's something that we need to look forward to making sure is in the next year's budget, so that the mayor has.
A
to
written,
respond.
record of, because a lot of times, I think we get it orally.
We
but maybe it
get
wasn't
a
written.
budget.
Right, but that's
we get a
only if you're at the
one-page budget.
finance subcommittee. When, once you're at city council, there's no, unless you've gone to every budget finance subcommittee meeting, you don't get that
Well,
information.
when the book comes.
You
I
can
know.
always watch it online.
When the
if
budget
you
comes
can't
to
make
us.
it to it.
I think it's the responsibility of the mayor, and I think charter calls for this, for the mayor to explain the budget, the deviations from the past.
And they do, they've
And
always
in writing.
have.
If
If you ask, they do. I mean, if it's a huge
I think I could point out
deviation.
one issue from this past season that wasn't brought up and that was the funding for the community center. I saw it as a huge deviation from previous, we got X'd out of the budget. Well, I think it's important to say we used to fund the community center,
Yeah,
and
that
now
should
we're
have
not
been
gonna
left out.
fund. Now we're not gonna provide funds for the food program. So, anyway.
But I think she was had an
Oh, I see.
explanation for it.
But
She
it wasn't,
said-
no, that came up a week or two later. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
it wasn't pointed out,
It wasn't
'cause
something
I heard
that
about
was
it
brought
before
up
and I
at the
went through
budget
and I got to
message.
Hagan about
And
it that
so I think
day.
it's important to follow the charter
Yeah.
and make sure that any deviation is brought up.
Is it more than like
forth.
5%
So
or
let me-
7% or 10% or something like that?
Just
Or
for the
is it
sake
wiped,
of
is the line
clarity.
item wiped out?
Yeah.
I
So
think it's important.
if you're saying we should make sure that the mayor does this, are you suggesting that
We
we put
need
it
to-
into
we
a
need to be
motion,
vigilant.
or we?
No, it's
we
already
need
in the
to-
charter,
we need-
it's
it's
just.
in the
I'm
charter.
just asking for
Follow it.
Yeah,
clarification.
it's in the charter, and either the charter is followed or it's not followed.
Uh-huh.
Well, in finance subcommittee, if you see the deviations coming out in the budget, you can ask the mayor to please.
Yes, and
please,
the mayor's very
please-
good at
Please put this
explaining
down in
it.
writing and put it in as part of the budget, information that these certain line items were changed because of da-da-da-da-da. They can always put that into the budget.
Into
We
the
don't
budget
vote-
message.
Correct,
Right,
and we don't
into the
vote
budget
on
message.
that until.
No, until we've had
June,
our hearings.
Right, and that could be
gone
all
through.
part of,
But I think it's important when
the
the message is
information.
brought forth from the mayor's office to the council that all of the major changes are
Disclosed.
substantially
Well,
disclosed,
that-
and so we can evaluate them.
and you can do that early on in the process. You can ask her that now, because she's starting to have her
Sure.
budget.
I mean,
And
question,
when we submit our budget to her, you can then ask that be included in the budget.
Mhm.
That there are any deviations over 10% or something, whatever.
I jotted that down, clarification and charter note
So-
regarding mayor explaining budget discrepancies.
So when we give her our budget, we can say,
I
could
wouldn't
you
say
please,
discrepancies.
in
This
your
is
mayoral.
This is one of those classic
introduction,
cloudy
just-
areas for me as a city councilor,
Same, yeah.
where I could say, yeah, I really think I wanna make sure that the mayor has that. There's a big difference from me as an individual councilor going to the mayor saying, I wanna see this, versus Joe as the council president saying, I wanna see this, versus making a formal motion to make sure we have a documented record that we wanna see this. So this is something that I get mired up in a bit, so I do wanna talk about this. When we have these things that don't fit into a criteria of, okay, there's no need for a motion because of this, then do we just go out on our own and ask the mayor? Or
Well, I don't
do
think
we-
in this case there's a need for a motion. I think that as the president, who's working side by side with the mayor on the budget right now, she's asked for our budget from the city council, that if the president said to the mayor, in keeping with the charter, could we please, so that we're not ambushed or feeling like we're ambushed or anything else, that if there's any huge deviations in any of the line items, that you make us aware of it.
But
in
I
advance.
will also stand by that any single person in this room, I think, would be fine if you welcome to the
Absolutely.
office and say, if you approach it nicely, hey,
Yeah.
Karen, we were going through the charter, it says here, do
Absolutely.
you do something in writing, or how do we get that information?
Yes, she will.
I think
She's
I
very
think she's gonna
open.
say, leave my office, it's none of your
No,
business.
she
Just say,
won't
"No."
do that. She's
So
very open.
I will
she's
certainly
very
do it and get
accepting.
back to you, but I mean, I really think every.
Yeah, I prefer to go through the procedure through you rather than doing it casually. I'd like a written record.
Well, I get it, it prevents 6 people sitting in our office asking the exact same
Right,
question.
Exactly. We've all got the same
Sure, like,
question and
really?
everybody
You guys
gets
not
the
talk
same.
to each other?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, no, we can't, it's open meeting.
Well,
Yeah.
and I mean, maybe I'll do it in the form of a motion, or somebody can yell form of a motion afterwards, but I think the budget, absolutely, the full budget needs to be on our website. I mean, this is something the community wants to have, and it's us in Chicopee, we're like one of
Well,
the
I'll-
only
I'll-
don't do that.
I'll certainly put that in the form of a motion.
Okay, so motion on the table, to put the full budget, once it's accepted, available to the public.
Once it's
On
proposed, once it's
electronic.
proposed.
I mean,
Once it's not accepted, once it's proposed.
No, I think it should be accepted.
once it's accepted.
Once
right?
it's accepted by
Yes,
us.
yes.
Yeah, ratified, I mean, why
I
put something
think
that's not been
A
ratified?
proposed budget is something that enables the community to be aware of what the proposal is and come into the open hearings, the meetings of the
They
finance
can
committee.
come in any of our meetings.
I
they can
understand,
view
but
them
if we
on the
put
TV.
the mayor's proposed budget online,
Well, that
then
can be
folks
your
can take a look at
motion,
it.
that can be your motion.
And then they could say, oh, gosh, why are we doing this?
But I think there
Why-
should be a
maybe we
motion, I can't
shouldn't
remember
do
if there's a
that.
second on this, but I think this should be a motion to move to finance this request.
I'll second that.
I mean, I think that the request is fine, but I think it should be moved to finance. There was a second.
Yeah,
Any other discussion on that?
no, I agree.
That's
I think it should be hashed out in finance.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Let's hash it out, Dave.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you're creating a lot of work for yourselves. I hope you're
Motion to
This is a good
put
thing.
the
Sign
city
up for it.
budget online after acceptance.
Or it could be discussed.
I would,
I mean-
I would submit a propose an amendment to have that, well, can we amend, yeah, we can.
I thought we were
Yeah.
just kind of discussing having
Although the
all
motion
things
was-
of
I think
disclosing
that- I think
the
that amendment
budget
would have
be
to be
moved to the
Made
finance
before,
committee.
so can we reconsider
We'll come
that?
back.
Consider this
Well,
matter and
You
say.
just go to finance and state your case.
Wasn't that what we just
Well, I think
agreed
we.
to?
I mean, I think the gist of it is putting the budget online. I think the negotiation of whether
Who
it be
seconded the motion to
before-
put the full city budget
David.
online?
Counselor
I
Carey,
Submit,
To move it to finance.
To move it to
Move
finance.
Finance, yes. I seconded the
Motion to put
it
the full
online.
city budget online after acceptance to finance doesn't make any sense.
No.
Motion to move the
Define.
discussion of whether it's the proposed budget, the full budget, the approved budget, online, how to do that, where to do it was
The
with.
original motion, I don't think ever got a second. I don't know if it needs to be rescinded.
yeah, no.
Yeah, so who
Was
wants
you
to
the
make?
second?
If it doesn't get a
I was
second,
the second.
then
I seconded the original,
I made a motion to put the full city budget online after
and I
acceptance,
seconded it.
And then we
There we
discussed
go.
it, and
Okay.
Joe,
and then we never took a vote.
Okay.
So we take a vote.
So this was, the motion in the second was to put the full thing
Online.
on budget.
online.
Right, so,
After acceptance.
after acceptance. So this is for, you think it should be, wait a minute.
I'm sorry.
Motion
Wait
to
a
put the
minute,
full
but-
city budget online after acceptance,
I would-
second by,
I don't think, we don't have a
I
full
would-
council here. I don't think this
That's
is
what I'm
something
gonna say.
that- Yeah.
I'm
We
gonna
have
call
seven
rules
members.
to order right
Yeah.
here. No, I don't think we can take that motion without a full city council and it being on our agenda. I'm
right,
sorry,
that's why I thought it had to.
That's too big.
That's why I thought it had to go to like
Yeah.
rules and regs or something
Yeah,
like that.
that's too
big.
So we should move it to finance?
Well, you know what, we gotta be
can move
careful
that
too,
one
as far as
to
our agenda
rules and
said
regulations.
orientation for city councilors.
That's right.
Right.
I think maybe we should hold off
If
any
somebody
more
in
of these
finance in the
agendas
big-
until.
Big city council meetings want to make that motion and send it and write up that motion and make it out to the city council, then we can do that.
Yeah, I can do
I
that
think
for the
we're
next
getting
meeting,
way out
that's
of the,
fine.
Right.
We have
Scope
gone a
of
little
things.
further than.
we have gone very far.
It was very
Outside.
good.
You know,
very
it's
good
refreshing to be able
information.
to speak openly about various
Yeah.
things, and I think we're generating additional ideas
Yeah, and I
as we do
think,
so.
you know,
No, I
let's
think we
stay
should
away
do
from
this again.
motions and
All
things
right,
like
so
that
what's the
until we're with
next?
the full city council.
Supplemental
The last one is
appropriation.
zoning,
Huh.
and
Oh, that's easy.
I wish I had a map here because it's much easier to just see an overlay of the town and the zoning on it. Yeah, so you can go out there and see them.
That's
They're
fine.
all on
I couldn't find one that fit.
Oh,
in
you know
here
what,
right
actually, we
now.
just updated our zoning.
We
I
did?
think I have
Yes.
2 copies. Because I'm.
You can always go to the
Weirdo.
DPW and they'll have all your copies.
But again, there's not, there won't be a quiz on this, but it's good to get a feel. You'll hear people refer to, each of them have different ordinances, building requirements,
Our
setbacks.
assessors.
We just had to
One time I said
redo,
neighborhood downtown
zoning map.
business, and everyone was like,
we had to redo the zoning map because it was written on paper with a big pen, and where the pen was fat, you couldn't tell where the lines were. So now it's all electronic, which is good.
Goes
No,
back
my other
to-
one is next to my desk, I'm sorry, but you can have that one.
Yeah. So again, it's just something to be aware of the different zones, not that you have to memorize it, but if you hear new business.
You
might
read it.
Yeah, exactly.
I know.
It's getting late, but also, which is probably, actually, I think it's perfect because they're probably a whole different meeting, the whole idea of open meeting laws, we have to be very aware of it. You know, we may have been in violation of talking about some of the Confederate flag issues, so I talked to the Attorney General's office quite a bit about it, and you know, they said, we are here to help with compliance, not to penalize. I think we got a lot of kudos for, you know, she was glad that someone came up front and said, you know, how much it says, but this is very important that literally when I responded to that person with a reply all, that was a violation. So be very careful with email, be very careful with social media. You know, that's why if we have a East Hampton City Council Facebook page, which I need to get back on my butt and get it updated. But even there, it's almost going to be electronic posting because you can't get in a situation where, hey, what did you guys talk about? You know,
Yeah.
so. But just be very aware of that fact. And also, as we mentioned earlier, if you get requests, just to be safe, create a PDF, you know, send it off to Barb or a printed copy of Barb. It's just good to have that any of those things that come in have been documented in open meeting. But Jen, I had called earlier to see, because they said on their website they have trainings. Well, they haven't offered it for a while. I don't know if it's budgetary or not. I don't know if you got a different answer than I
I
did.
called and I left a message
It
to see
shouldn't
what
be.
the criteria would be to how many people we'd have to have for open meeting laws, and I think it'd be a good idea if we had the chairs of all the other standing committees
Mhm.
go
The
through
school
open
committee
meeting,
members,
because,
all of 'em.
Yeah.
you know, all of them. Because, yeah, we're supposed to be setting an example and we
Yeah.
might have screwed
Refresher's
up,
always
so,
good.
you know, it's a good idea for us to do it. So we'll wait to hear back from them. And like I said, I might reach out to Sully, because
Yeah,
I might have
yeah,
somebody in the
yeah,
office who
exactly.
can do that.
That'd be
so.
bad. I mean, it's always great. I mean, it's, you know, it's kind of frustrating on some levels, but I found that in the private sector, me responding immediately and everyone knowing what was going on was a good thing.
Exactly.
And the public sector,
Gotta be careful.
Right, and that's the whole thing where it's like in the logic side of it and the legal side of it, because, I mean, when it first happened, I said we should put this in the public record, and then I was late to that meeting, and then it was Christmas, and then it was a new council, like, I just let too much time go
Yeah.
by, but I, you know, I was beating the public record wrong, you know, so.
oh, but I guess you guys got this, right? And I
Yes.
guess supposedly we all got this because of years ago, but there is
Yeah, but you go
information on
through it
open
when you
meeting
do the
laws.
test.
Right, and then,
The
there's a-
ethics test?
there's a lot of
No,
information
that's
on.
not, the open meeting isn't the test.
Ethics,
It's
yeah.
ethics.
There's a
Right.
lot of stuff online, videos and stuff, so there's a lot of.
If in doubt, pick up the phone and call.
Yeah, they're very
That's all
responsive.
you do.
They're very responsive.
If in doubt, pick
Yeah.
up the phone and call.
So yeah, I can let you know what happens with that.
Never
Because
talk
I
about
thought maybe
council
if-
business
if they
outside
say,
of
oh, if you
council
have 15
chambers.
people together, because I talked to somebody in.
I
Who
don't.
was with Maura at one event or something
If
else
a
like that.
resident
She was like,
calls
yeah, if
me,
you
I'll
get like
listen
15
to
people
him.
together, we'll totally come out and do
Mhm.
it, so I think
Don't
that's
give
easy
them my
enough for us
opinion,
to
but I'll
do.
listen to them,
And,
you know.
yeah,
Mhm.
and especially with all
Okay.
the
I'll take that into consideration.
redoing
Thank you
all
for
of
calling me.
the public access documents
I
now,
agree,
right now.
yes. I don't make my
It's
mind up
huge,
usually
and it's
until
something Rosenberg is really
I've
pushing
gathered
for
all the
too,
information.
so.
Well, what are you thinking? I'm not
I think
thinking anything right
support
now, I'm just gathering information.
Our favorite
Thank
senator,
you.
we get compliant as fast as possible.
Mhm.
Do you have any questions?
Probably a million, huh?
No,
I'd like
actually,
to
no.
thank you for-
I think it was
putting this together.
great. Thank you for putting this together.
Yes, it's
So
good.
For
helpful.
the opportunity to have this discussion.
Yeah, that alone.
Yeah, and thank you
has
for the
been
other
very
councils for
valuable.
attending. And actually, this is really important because, again, this is the first time we tried anything like this, so be honest, what you thought helped, what you thought didn't help. Did we get too off track? Did
No,
that? No.
I thought it was great, and my thought is, if this was helpful for the larger group, are there topics that we could, on a quarterly basis, convene in a setting like this, and under the topic of training, discuss those things like open meeting rules and other things? Off the top of my head, I don't know what they are.
I
but-
would love that. I think we
Yeah.
could take a look at what's happening with state legislation and see how that's possibly
Yeah.
gonna affect East
Things
Hampton in
like
the
that.
next 6
Mhm.
months. Or that we have a meeting where, you know, let's sit down with the planning department and talk about all of the projects that they have going on and what's happening next, or talking with, you know, let's have the school department come in and talk about how they're going to deal with trying to get funding for a new school while we're already on the hook for the other school. And,
Yeah.
you know, how we can support those other departments, I think would be an absolutely great idea.
We could even,
DPW.
we could even do that during our regular meetings. The president could, on a meeting night that we don't have a whole lot of things on, could invite a department chair to come in and update us on what's happening in their departments.
Mhm.
Absolutely. I mean, we have pretty short city council meetings, haven't we?
That would.
But what were you saying, that
Good
we
thing
would
to
have to
do.
pay them? I didn't understand when you said that earlier.
Well, not
'Cause I don't
all,
think
not
that's
all
true.
of our employees are salaried, some are on
Right,
an
but
hourly rate.
what we read
and
tonight is we can ask anybody to come. so
We
they put
can,
them
but
on the
we will
agenda.
have to pay them overtime. A lot of them that aren't on salary, because they're coming to work. They're coming to our meetings, so they're coming to work.
It's not part of their job description to be present.
For the department heads, that should be part of their job description if it isn't already.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think we can
If-
ask.
it isn't already,
If it
it
is,
should.
if it isn't, but I'm just saying, you just have to keep
For
it in
the hourly
mind.
wage employee.
Yeah, we just-
To be called upon to go outside of their normal working
I don't
hours.
have to.
Just
Evening,
keep it in
yeah.
mind, you know.
Yeah, I think department heads.
Never ask a question, answer to. I think the department heads are salary. so.
Probably, yeah. I mean, I like the idea. For me, there's part of me that looks at this like, I feel less inclined that they need to come to me, that I'm getting paid to learn to find out what they do. And so, I mean, I'd be more inclined, I think it's a great idea, but let's do it during their working time. I don't feel like I need to say, city council, because they don't, I mean, we can call them, but I mean, I think part of what I'm getting paid for is to understand, to do the best job I can to understand what they do. And so I think it's a great idea, but I'm thinking, let's say, hey, listen, 5 o'clock, we'd love to hear your plans, what you do. Can we meet you? I think that'd be more reasonable than having to say, come instead of city council, public,
For that matter, we could
So I'm gonna
schedule a
call them
council
public
meeting at a
working
different hour.
meetings.
We could schedule a council meeting during their working hours for that matter, if we had a topic area that we had a concern.
Right, yeah.
And we could,
It would be a special meeting,
a
obviously.
special meeting of the city council, sure.
I'm calling them public working meetings,
Mhm.
because that's what we do with them.
So,
Thank you
Okay.
guys very much.
I think we've
make a
run
motion
out.
to adjourn.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, say
Pass.
This is Joe McCoy. I'm the East Hampton City Council President. I just wanted to clarify that the votes you saw taken in the previous video were strictly for training purposes for the orientation of the new city councilors. None of those votes constituted official city council business. Thank you.